Good evening, everyone. This is the Board of Education. We'll call the meeting to order. It's Monday, September 11th, 2017. It's 7 p.m. We're in the North Boardroom. Well, actually 7:03. We'll try. That better? Okay. We'll begin with a roll call, please. Ms. Van Twyver.
Mrs. Oden.
Here.
Dr. Murataki.
Here.
Ms. Van Twyver is here. Mr. Hallowell. Mr. Hallowell. Mr. Mosier. Mr. Mosier. Mrs. Ziem. Here. Ms. Hohense.
Here.
Mr. Kaufman. Mr. Kaufman.
I'm sorry?
Are you here, sir?
Yes.
Thank you.
I couldn't
Mr.
hear.
Farrington.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, and we've also got our student
No,
rep.
excuse me. Dr. Mosley, Dr. McKinney, Mrs. Fitzpatrick, Mr. Donovan, Ms. Tomasetti, and Mr. McIntyre. Sorry
We
about
got everybody
that, folks.
now? Okay, continuing on. Thank you. We'll continue with the prayer, and then after the prayer, it has been suggested that we observe a moment of silence September 11th, and then we'll continue with the Pledge of Allegiance. Mrs. Ziem, if you would, please.
Oh, that's great. Okay. Almighty God, we have the high honor and the serious duty of managing the educational institutions of our beloved city. In our common endeavors, may we find a spirit of unity and understanding which will enable us to face our multiple problems with an objective mind, with justice and charity for all, so that any and all decisions made by us will be for the betterment and greater happiness of all our fellow citizens. Amen. To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, at this point, for those of you who have an agenda, we are going to, if there's no objection on the board, we're going to modify things a little bit to accommodate the folks that are here this evening, and we're going to move up our public comment section next. We're going to ask Alderman Cookson is here, and he wants to speak to the board just quickly or briefly on a topic, and then we want to let him have his turn, and then he's off to another meeting, and then we'll move on from there. We don't have a sign-up sheet, so we're going to, we'll work through it. Alderman Cookson?
Good evening, Board of Education, Dr. Mosley, representatives of the school district, and the teachers union. Good evening. I come before you this evening with unprepared remarks, but I wanted to make you aware of two pieces of legislation that I'm introducing before the Board of Aldermen tomorrow evening, the 12th of September. The first resolution that I'm introducing is a feasibility study of Daniel Webster College, the campus formerly known as Daniel Webster College. And the purpose of that study is to explore how we could utilize it, all different parts of the city, whether it be records, city clerk, all the way to education, how we could utilize the campus for educational purposes. My understanding, based on what's been reported and what we've discussed in meetings, is that the Burke Street is no longer an option for the school district to move into. That ultimately impacts the Brentwood program and the ability to bring those students back from Merrimack into the school district, potentially. So I have reached out to each one of the board members. I've reached out to Dr. Mosley. I've presented at least the idea that we explore some of the Daniel Webster College for the purpose of the school needs. And in doing so, again, tomorrow evening will be the introduction of a feasibility study. It will be introduced for its first reading. It will be assigned to committee, and then over the next month, we'll be conducting that feasibility study to see what the outcome is. The importance of this is that in October will be a public auction for that campus. And if it is so decided that it would be worthwhile for us to explore, we need to be able to put in a bid for that campus and for that property. So my second resolution, which will be introduced tomorrow evening, is for a bond not to exceed $23.5 million, which is the assessed value of the property. And we're hoping that it will not be that expensive, but the resolution will be for a bond not to exceed that amount. We will have a public hearing on it, and it's all based on the timing. And it's very important for us to be able to introduce both resolutions tomorrow evening so that we can have a public hearing and then ultimately make a decision on whether we'd like to pursue the campus prior to October 17th and the ultimate bid happening on October 23rd. So I'm looking forward to the discussion. I know that there's probably another resolution that's up for discussion tomorrow evening, which will have a lot of excitement with regard to a performing arts center. But I hope that we'll have some support for my resolutions to look forward to Daniel Webster College being a part of the city and utilizing it for educational purposes for different needs of the city. So I'm available for any questions that you may have.
Well, I'm not sure we want to get into all of that right now. I appreciate that, but
Certainly.
I think that for the benefit of those of you who don't have an agenda, we have that subject on our agenda later this evening. I just wanted to give Alderman Cookson a chance to get in and, as I say, move on to other meetings. But we'll be looking at it in the context of would it be appropriate, how might it be appropriate for the district, and
Exactly.
and then we'll be obviously in contact with you
Wonderful.
and other people.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming in.
Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. You too. Now, is there anybody else that had any public comment? You have a list. Okay. Thank you, Adam.
Which one? Adam Marcoux, 4 Jalori Lane, President of the Nashua Teachers Union. I'd first like to thank the board for allowing public comment regarding the expired contracts that was not on the agenda and recognizing the lots of people that are here this evening. On Wednesday, we go into our next and hopefully final round of negotiations for a teacher's contract. On that day, it will be 2 months, 29 days since our last round of negotiations. The board is fully aware of my displeasure in the delay that I see that is. I've been told repeatedly There are other things going on in this district. Great. We were told that we would have a discussion about the proposal. And here we are, September 11th, and we still haven't had that conversation. I have a para contract that's 73 days expired. My contract is 11 days expired. I don't know why either of them expired when we were fully engulfed in negotiations, needed some more information for the full board, and no response. I don't know what kind of message that sends to the public or to my membership, but I think the question is answered by the people that are here behind me this evening and ready to stand behind me as we move forward in these negotiations. I have been clear with this board in my public comments, in my written comments, in my WMUR comments, that I am hopeful that we can continue to collaborate in a positive manner to come to an agreement that is fair for the teachers and paras, but also recognizes the city's spending cap and the budget within this school district. We can't do that if you ignore me. June, July, and August, I felt that this board ignored me. The elected president of the Nashua Teachers Union, the group that you have to negotiate with for those 4 units. I don't find that acceptable. I've made my comments clear that we wanted to do this, that we were hoping to meet in July so we could come back fresh, ready to go with a school year with a contract underway. And here we are, September 11th, another school year, no contract. What message are you sending to all these people? As of August 1st, there were 56 resignations from this school district. Do you know where they're going? Not here. They're leaving. You know why? Because they're getting a better deal somewhere else. It is astonishing the amount of teachers we've lost in the middle of their career that have been through here and loyal to this district for 5, 7, 8, 10, 12 years. Get all the training and PD and learning Lucy Calkins this and everyday math that and competencies and everything else, and then they're gone. This didn't help, and I know that for a fact because I've talked to those teachers. Some of those people that left that I worked with personally at my school that left for a better deal, because why stay here? Why should we stay here is the question. So on Wednesday, I'm hopeful that we come in, we can iron out something, and that the next time I bring the membership to a meeting, it's to ratify a tentative agreement. Thank you.
Sue, do you have the list?
No, you have it right there.
Oh, snuck right up on me. So we have Mabel Brown.
Hello, my name is Mabel Brown. I'm a teacher here at Nashua High School North. This is my 12th year in the district. And I decided this weekend to do a little bit of research, and I had a question from the board regarding that. I started looking at school districts around Nashua and finding out what other people were making with the same amount of education and degree that I have. Milford, Manchester, Londonderry, Hollis, Brookline, and Amherst. If I was paid at my proper step, they all still would be making thousands of dollars more than me. Right now, I'm year 12, step 5, and I will be personal and share this since it's public record. I make $51,000 a year. I would be making almost $17,000 more a year if I was in one of these districts. Why don't we deserve a fair pay?
Brenda Silva.
Good evening. My name is Brenda Silvey. I am a Spanish teacher here at Nashua High North. I reside at 75 Underhill Street. My daughter graduated in 2002, the last class to graduate from the original high school. My 16-year-old son has the benefit of attending this beautiful facility. And she's very jealous. She never got that opportunity because this is a great place to be a student. It's a great place to be a teacher. I just want to share that I got my 25th year certificate in June of service here in Nashua, and I don't want to go anywhere else. Thank you. So I'm just here to ask that we can resolve this soon and have a fair contract because we have a beautiful community. I love the diversity in this community, the relationship that we have with our ELL students. So anything you can do, we would greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Amy Woods.
Good evening. Just as a matter of context, I think my name is Amy Woods. I live at 10 Carnoustie Way in Nashua, New Hampshire. My son is a second grader at New Searles Elementary School. I used to teach at Nashua High School North for 5 years, and since then I've been at the Bedford School District, and with the end of last year resigned my position as president of the Bedford Education Association. And it was in that context that I found myself to be a bit stunned at the fact that the process, which I mean, negotiations is never rainbows and fun, but it needs to happen. And the process seems to me to have been at best disrespected, if not completely dismissed, in the sense that when I was president of an association, it never entered my head that when I sent an intent to negotiate form or file to the school board, that there would be radio silence on the other side. That I find to be a bit disconcerting for the simple fact that that sends a very clear message that not only is the process not important, but perhaps the teams of professionals, and I have worked alongside many of these people for the 5 years that I was in town, and I will tell you that you have an incredibly talented, consummate group of professionals here, and without the security of knowing their future, and everything that gets tied up in that contract, it is not a mere distraction. It becomes demoralizing. And when you have to recognize that working conditions are also classroom conditions, I just can't urge the board enough to do their part, meet these professionals at least halfway in terms of their efforts to continue to do the work that they do, the excellent work that they do for the children of Nashua, New Hampshire, because let's not forget that that is what is at the core of a functioning school district, is what is best for those students. And it appears, and I'm certainly not suggesting that it's the case, but it appears that in the context and the condition that these talks are in right now, that that is being lost, and I don't think it's on the part of the teachers. Thank you.
Chairman. Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I respectfully ask the audience not to applaud during or prior or even after each speaker. I understand you're in favor of what they have to say. That's obviously why you're here. We have a long night. It's expeditious for everybody, so we all can be in decent shape tomorrow morning, you with our students and we in what lives we have. So I ask your respect and not speaking while a speaker is speaking or while applauding for each person that comes up. It's just going to make the night way more difficult than it already is obviously going to be. Thank you.
Okay, Leticia Mian?
Mr. Chairman,
Please, Mr. Hoffman, please.
I move to adjourn.
Seeing no second. Mrs. Mian, name and address, please.
I'm Leticia Mian. I live on Grand Avenue in downtown Nashua, and I work at Maine Dunstable Elementary. Seems pretty loud, but okay. I work at Maine Dunstable Elementary, and I was in my classroom 3 to 4 days a week in August, and I had the opportunity to see a lot of my colleagues over and over again because we were all in there, and we're all excited, and we knew we weren't going to have a contract, but we were excited to start the school year, and we knew that we had to put that time in to make our job doable. So we were there. Walking in and out, a couple days, I was walking past parents who were out there pulling weeds out of the ground and weed whacking and planting things and spreading mulch because they want to put their personal time, energy, and money into our school. My colleagues were having trouble getting in the building because they were carrying in all the things they bought over the summer for their classrooms. Everyone's dedicated in the school communities to making this work. And it's not easy because we have constraints. That's why I've spent almost $800 so far since January, because I know the district can't buy it all. And some of it's furniture, and some of it's academic instructional materials, and some of it's notebooks for the kids whose parents can't buy notebooks for whatever reason. It's all kinds of things. It's decorations for the classroom, but it's so much more than that, you know. It's file boxes, it's a giant storage shelf because I needed my classroom to be more functional because I have more kids than ever this year. We met Dr. Mosley, and he took the time and effort to arrange to meet with all of us the first day of the official school year. And since then, he's been in my classroom, which impressed me mightily. There are an awful lot of classrooms in this district, and he's been to a lot of them. And so I feel that Dr. Mosley is really doing his part as well. My parents have been filling out forms. They've been coming to open house. They've been asking me about homework. They've been texting me with questions and following through when I answer. Everyone's invested here. When I went to the union meeting last week, it took us 2.5 hours to decide to take some action because nobody wanted to do it. All the hands kept going up, and all the teachers kept saying, but I have to do this. We can't not do this because my students need their recommendations. I can't possibly do my job. I need to do these committees. Nobody wants to not do anything. We want to work with you. We want a contract because we have a life to live, and we have children, and we have spouses. But what we really want to do is in this school district. I love being in Nashua. I love seeing my kids around the neighborhood. I love that Nashua's issues are my issues, and they're my students' issues. I don't want to go somewhere else, but I also have to be able to pay my bills. And I know we have a tough fiscal reality. I'm a special ed teacher. I understand what special ed does to a budget. It's federally mandated, so we have to figure it out. I'm not saying there's an easy answer, and I'm not trying to cast blame. I'm just saying we need to pull together as a community and work together, and we need the board to be part of our educational community. That's what we need. You know, when I look around, I see teachers, administrators, I see paras, I see school psychologists who have no stake in this, I see behavior specialists who have no stake in this. They're all here tonight. My administrators are here. because we are a community, and that's what we're asking of you guys, is to be a community with us and to work through these hard issues together. Because we have a problem that we need to fix. It's a problem-solving issue. It's not a battle. It's a problem-solving issue that everyone who loves Nashua cares about. So that's why we're here, to make sure that you all know how much we care about this district, certainly about our contract, but also about the education of the children of the Nashua School District. Thank you.
Linda Walsh.
Just take a breath. How you guys doing tonight? Good. Good evening. I'm Linda Walsh, and I have been in this district for about 18 years. I've been teaching for 18 years. I am still not even close to the top step. It just keeps going out of my grasp, contract after contract after contract. And I did mean to, before I introduce myself, to thank Dr. Mosley for coming and being our superintendent. Your words on the first day, it was hard to hear you in the audience, but I know that some of us went and we watched it online so that we could hear you again. Your words were inspiring. I know that you care about kids. I know that you care about teachers. And I want to say to you that I'm really sorry that you're coming at such a difficult time, because this is a mess. And I'm not going to apologize that we're here. I'm not going to apologize for any of that, but I really am looking forward to your leadership and having short-term and long-term goals. So I'm sorry that you walk in and this is it. It is business and not personal whatsoever. I was thinking the other day, because we were considering what do we do if there's no contract. And every year I feel that we give it more time, and we give back to the community. And some years it's a difficult budget year, or it's a bad economy, or we've had a new superintendent. And every year, for some reason, we say, okay, well, we're teachers, we love our jobs, so we're just gonna, fine, we'll take the $750. Okay, well, fine, we'll freeze the steps. Okay, we'll give me $250. And we go on and on like that every year. And the other day when we were considering, well, what do we do if we don't get a contract? And the idea of work to rule came up. And I haven't had to do that in several years. And I got in a pit in my stomach, because we all hate it. There is nothing more painful for a teacher than to go work to rule, to work your contract, because none of us do. And I was really depressed over the weekend, thinking, gosh, I gotta leave on time, I gotta come in, it's giving me anxiety, I'm staying up at night. And then I was at Crosby's Bakery. Don't judge me, it was lunch. And I walked in and I'm buying some magnificent treats, and from behind me, I hear, Ms. Walsh, and 3 of my babies, I teach 6th grade. 3 of my old babies come up and give me the biggest hug. And the chills went down my spine, and I said to myself, this is why I do it. And then same day, and you can't make this up, and you all know that it happens. I'm driving down Main Street, and one of my old babies yells out the window on Main Street while they're driving, by the way, so I don't condone that. Ms. Walsh, out the window. And I just thought, wow, I'm up to 4 kids now. And I go somewhere else and I see kids, and I go out to dinner and I see my old 6th graders, and I give them a $20 tip, because you know why? I want to be that good role model. I want them to have that $20 tip, even if they didn't deserve it, because I'm an adult. And I was thinking about how mad I am to have to think about coming into work to rule, and how stressed I am. And it occurred to me that, teaching is not a hobby, and it's not even a job. I would say it's a career, and everyone in this room knows that it's beyond that, because it's a calling. And just because we are called to be a teacher, and just because we love kids, and I was going to come up and brag about how I loved kids more than all of you, but I know that it's not true. And so just because we love kids does not mean that this board or this community can lay that burden on our shoulders and that we carry that burden for the whole community. If there's a school shooting, who is in the school? If there's a kid that needs a backpack, who buys them a backpack? Winter clothes are being shoved in a bag inconspicuously to go home. We have food pantries. We have clothing pantries. These are our kids. And I never ever gave birth. I have thousands of kids. And it occurs to me what makes me the most angry. And it's not hard to make me angry. But what occurs to me that makes the most angry, I don't have kids. And every time I spend money on notebooks, I say, I'm spending my kids' college fund because I don't have kids. And every time I buy a winter coat, I say, oh, it's all right, Linda. You're spending your kids' college fund. But I bet most people in this room have their own kids, and they have to pay their own kids' college fund, and at that point, it really doesn't become funny. So I resent the negative comments on Facebook this weekend about how teachers are selfish, and I'm sorry that we've only been without a contract for a few days. But the reality is we're not here because we've been without a contract for a few days. That would be ridiculous. What we're here for is that contract after contract after contract we have given back. And we have given back a lot. And when we look at the numbers, and if there's people not here tonight, it's just because they haven't done the math. And I don't like math, but we'll get to that in a different meeting. So it is imperative that we can't support your kids on our own. You have to support schools because Nashua's only going to be strong enough as its schools are. And you send the message that schools and kids are important because we can't do that by ourselves. And if you stand up for what's right and support schools, then the community will do it as well. Because you can ask us to love our job. But if Bob the accountant is not doing school dances and pizza night and buying winter jackets for kids, this is the only profession where the community expects us to give everything for free after 3 o'clock. And in the summers, you think we have it off, but we're spending our money, we're spending our time, we're working second jobs. I don't think my dentist has to deal with this. I don't see like dentists. Would that be fun if there were dentists here tonight? But there's not because they don't have to. So please consider on the 13th when you look at our contract, I know we're in different places, but we've given back. Adam mentioned something about it would take 5.8 million to equalize the pay scale for what we've given over the last several contracts. And I know we don't have that. But please keep in mind, that was never your money. We gave you that money back that you promised me when I started in this district at $28,000, and I knew that $250 a year wasn't going to be forever, or when I went up to $500, or then it was like $750, and I thought, I'm really making it in the world. It's your job to keep your promise to me however stupid I was when I became a teacher and decided that someday when I was 46, I would make more than my age in take-home pay. That's enough. So please, please, please think about that you're not supporting just teachers, you're supporting your kids that aren't mine, that sometimes I feel like I love more.
Okay, we have one more, and I thought I had been doing all right, and I'm going to struggle with this one. Susan, thank you. Sue, I just never seen it written. I know who you are.
My handwriting is horrible to begin with. So.
No, now I get it.
Hi, my name is Sue Judici. I teach at Fairgrounds Middle School. I have been teaching since 1975 when I decided not to go into dentistry when I was accepted at Tufts Dental School. And this is my 31st year in this district. And I am a taxpayer, obviously, in this city. I just want to give you a little different perspective. Yeah, it's about the money, but I also want you to understand that the money that we all give back to you. And I'm going to just tell you my story, and I know there are hundreds of other teachers that are in the same place. We get 11 sick days and 3 personal days a year. And then at the end of the year, if we haven't used the 3 personal days, they roll over into sick days. When my father died in 1989, I used 1 sick day. I made sure that the arrangements were made so that it would fall on a weekend so I wouldn't have to miss school. When my mother died 2 years ago, same thing, 1 school day that I took. My son was married Saturday in Saratoga Springs, New York, and this is the first time in 31 years that I have taken more than 2 days in a row. I took my 3 personal days. And you know what? I was so darn stressed out because I had to be gone for 3 days. It almost ruined the fact that it was the best days of my life. And I know that this happens to many, many teachers. Every year, I'm at the max. I've built my days up to 165 days, and every year I give you all back probably 10 days. Now, over a course of 30 years, I'm giving you a lot back. When I retire at the end of the year, I will be giving you a lot of sick days back. And that happens to teachers every single year. I'm not going to say I'm going to be out every Monday and Friday until I use all my sick days up. That's not me, and it's not right for my kids. I teach 7th grade, and it's not right for them. 2 contracts ago, I lost about $7,000 because you changed the severance. So there's another money that I'm giving back. So I got to tell you, I'm a little frustrated. I did not vote for the $750 last year. I thought it was a slap in the face. I thought it was an insult. So I'm just giving you my story as far as that is concerned. And there are hundreds of teachers out here that have done the same thing that I have. In corporate, if you work any time past your hours, well, most corporate, they say to you, they pay you for doing that. If you go by any school in this district on vacations over the summer, you will see tons of cars around the buildings, and those are teachers getting ready or just going in to make things ready for when their kids come back. That's hours that we don't get paid, right? So it's really important that people understand that. The other thing is we have kind of a policy or unwritten policy that if a parent emails us, we should get back to them within 24 hours. The fact that it's gone over 2 months and the negotiating team did not get back to the Board of Ed about this that just fries me. I cannot believe that you weren't raised to do better than that. My parents would, be really angry at me for that. So shame on you if that's the case. And my mother always said, I'm getting dry mouth, my mother always said, actions speak louder than words. And there's been no action. And I am really, really disheartened by that. But thank you for listening. Okay.
Thank you, Sue. Name and address, please.
The worst thing was I had to speak after Linda Walsh.
Yes. Is there anyone else that didn't get their name?
Just as a sidebar, you can't make this stuff up. My colleagues will tell you that for 20 years before I came into the district, I was in the field of dentistry. Right here.
Okay, just a name and address, please.
Bobby Dujardin, 41 New Searles Road, Nashua. Good evening. Welcome, Dr. Mosley, to our district and to our mess. It's nice to have you here. But I think it's time that we talk a little bit about paras. people who talk off the cuff, I don't know how do they do it. I have to be prepared. So, I am starting year 21 as a paraeducator. And just to give you a little background, I won't bore you with details, but I am a certified para. I've gone as far as I can without further study to become a teacher. As of today, no plans thus far. I am the building para representative to the union. I am the volunteer coordinator of my school, and one of the members of the para contract, one of the 4 members of the para contract negotiating team. So the school system and the school district has and will continue to play an integral part in my life. Paraeducators have now been without a contract for 73 days longer than our teachers. And the negotiating teams for both units have been working diligently in an attempt to better our working conditions. The lack of response to our diligence is, to say the least, disappointing, disenchanting, and most of all, incredibly discouraging. I speak not only for myself and my fellow paras, but for every teacher who is assembled here tonight who is in need of para support in their respective classrooms. Needless to say, from a para's perspective, we are utilized to the point of being spread so thin that I have actually seen, thank goodness not in my own building, but I have actually seen on paper one schedule where a para in the city of Nashua is placed in a different place for each hour of her day. You talk about teacher burnout, it happens to us too, and I might add, for far less compensation. I speak for those who get up every morning, go to school, work with those who struggle the most, and to what end? To negotiate in good faith, only to be put on that proverbial back burner consistently, to be responded to not be responded to in a timely and reasonable manner, which is exactly what has happened here. And I know that you sense my sense of frustration. Everybody in this room feels the same frustration that I have. But I have to tell you, too, that we are tired of being told how valuable we are and how we are the glue that holds everything together. Well, let me just mention this. That glue is becoming very dry, and it's becoming very crumbly, and things are starting to peel and fall apart and crack. Nashua used to be the go-to place, the example set for other districts. As you've heard here tonight, we've lost 56 teachers recently, and heaven knows how many paras. This does not set the pace for people who are seeking employment in a reliable district, in what they would deem to be a reliable district. It simply isn't. We've bargained in good faith for many, many months. It's time for this to be resolved so we can move forward with the business of educating children, because that's what we do. In closing, I have to say that I did prepare something to say to you tonight. And for a lot of people, myself included, it is not easy for some of us to get up and speak in a public forum. The butterflies in the stomach, the sweaty palms, the headache, I can feel my blood pressure rising, the palpitating heart. But in looking at some of the faces over there from my school, and at looking at the faces that are sitting right in front of me, I've learned that I'm among friends here. And the palpitating heart and the sweaty palms, they shouldn't belong to us. They belong to you.
Anyone else who didn't get a chance to sign up?
Gary Hoffman, 18 Harbor Avenue, Unit 104, Nashua, New Hampshire. We don't want to be here tonight, quite frankly. I don't think anyone wants to be here tonight. We'd rather be home planning for our lessons. We'd rather be home correcting. But we're here tonight because of what Bobby was saying. This district is in trouble, guys. At my school, Fairgrounds Middle School, we lost a lot of teachers this summer to districts we would never lose people to before. We had a teacher get a pay raise in Manchester. We had a teacher go get a pay raise in Goffstown, a $13,000 raise in Amherst. We are here tonight because if we don't get a fair contract, all of our mid-career veterans are going to leave, and this will become a training ground for new teachers, and that's not going to help our kids. It's getting ugly. I tracked our pay all the way back to 1988. I adjusted it for inflation. Back in 1991, adjusted for inflation, a teacher with 8 years experience and a bachelor's degree would be earning $61,000 a year. Today, it's about $48,000, and it's not improving much. So we need a deal that's fair to all these great, wonderful men and women who showed up tonight because they care about their kids. And if we don't do that, this district's in trouble. And quite frankly, so are the kids in this city. We're here for us, but we're also here for them. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Oh, take me right out. Oh, we got one coming. You're next.
Wait your turn.
Wait, yeah. Wait a minute, is that the way it goes in school?
Good evening. My name is Gabe Ronnie. I'm a school counselor at Birch Hill. I live in Wyndham, and that's kind of the moral of the story. I'm going to try and keep this short and sweet. I've been around long enough to know that this is never easy, often gets ugly, unfortunately, and that there's a lot of different opinions that come into a final budget and all the decisions that have to be made for a contract. My point is that I believe the real difficulty in my experience and what I've seen before typically comes in when we get to the Board of Aldermen. I feel like Board of Ed in general really supports us. And I've been in front of most of these people many times, because I've been around long enough again, that I come and I explain every now and then what a school counselor does in an elementary school, because that's really weird and foreign to a lot of people who aren't in elementary schools.
Excuse me, Gabe, just 1 minute.
Yes.
We have the fire marshal here. I just want...
I figured that might happen at some point.
Yeah, so didn't I. So everybody, if you could just pay attention to whatever it is he needs for you to do. Just leave an open pathway, I guess. Okay. 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 Got to have the exits passable. Okay, I'm sorry, Gabe, go ahead.
Yeah, no problem. So I guess my point really is that not only I think, will we lose good teachers when contracts don't seem respectable to the teachers in the district? We can't attract teachers, but we also lose good families. I moved 7 years ago. One of the primary reasons and one of the primary things for me was I lived and worked in this district. I saw what goes on. I felt so disrespected every single time that I said, where can we move where the educators will be respected and they will teach my kids in a way that I know that they deserve to be taught. I know that everybody in this room comes to work regardless of our contract, and we work really hard, and I love that. And part of me didn't want to take them away from that. They were actually going to my school, so I really liked having my kids at my school. I could watch them every day. But I decided there's a few places where I could go where it doesn't get so ugly, and I made that decision for my family. More importantly, so will other families. I know there's a lot of families that grew up and born and bred in Nashua, and they love it. They're not going anywhere. There's also a lot of people who haven't been here their whole lives, like me. They moved here in the last 10 or 15 or 20, and they're going to look at these issues and they're going to say, Nashua isn't for my family. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, wait, oh yeah, you got cut out. Scott, you cut the line here, but go ahead. Since you're there, we'll keep it moving.
Okay.
This lady's next.
I'm sorry. My name is Scott Jaquith from the Nashua School District. My 100% is awesome. If you could see my 100%, what I can give, you'd be really impressed. But I can't give my 100% to the school district because I'm working 3 jobs, and I really have to share my 100%. When I first started in 2002, I was okay with that because I entered an agreement with the Nashua School District under what is known as deferred compensation. And basically what they said was, we can't pay you what you're worth now because you're not a master teacher. It's going to take you about 10 years to become a master teacher, and then we'll be able to pay you what you're worth. That's what steps are. So I said yes. After a couple years, that expanded to 15 years. So now it will take you 15 years to become a master teacher, and then we will pay you what it's worth. And I said yes. Well, 3 years ago, the step stopped. So basically what I was told is, you'll never get paid as what you're worth because you will never make it to be a master teacher. So I feel cheated. I feel lied to. I love Nashua. I love the Nashua School District. And please don't tell me it's all about the kids, because I know it's all about the kids. I wouldn't be a teacher if it wasn't about the kids. But when you're lied to, and it's really hard to come to work every day. So if you were, for example, a scientist in a lab and you were treated this way, would you move to another laboratory? Or if you were a pilot, would you switch to another airline? Or if you owned a tech company and you weren't treating very well, or you knew you could do better somewhere else, would you go for it? Or if you're a real estate agent? So I know this isn't a dialogue, a back and forth dialogue, but I would love to know, if you were in my situation, what would you do? Would you ask me to stick it out, even though you were lied to and you weren't being respected? Or would you go somewhere else where you could make $13,000 more? So thank you.
Thank you. No. Oh, well, you can always back out.
Say it, sister. My name is Ashley Clark. I live in Nashua. I'm a teacher. I'm an intensive needs teacher at Sunset Heights, and this is my 3rd year. I was a para for 3 years, too, at Nashua South with the high school kids. So I don't have a lot to say. I don't really have anything negative to say. I think for me, and the reason most of us are sitting here are, as he just said, for the kids. I mean, my students can't advocate for themselves. They are nonverbal, they have behaviors. So my day, I have 9 children in my room, all with one-on-one paraprofessionals. And a lot of those women have been there a long time. And we're all kind of a big team. We work really hard for our kids. I can't tell you how many times we provide dinner for them out of our own pockets, clothing, Christmas. We've funded Christmas, school supplies, backpacks, you name it. That's coming out of my pocket, in our pockets, in the school's pockets. And I think I'm scared for my kids, not even for myself. I'm scared of having to leave at the end of the day at a certain time and leave them sitting there with someone who's not trained with, the behavior needs of my students. And those are the kind of things that I worry about. And I speak for a lot of the intensive needs teachers and every teacher out there of how much we care for our kids, and that's why we're sitting here. For me, the money's a big deal, but that's not why I'm sitting here. I'm sitting here because I need to advocate for my students and my school community. And that's all I have to say.
Okay, I'd like to, we'll do a couple more if that's okay, and then we'll move on.
Okay.
You-
I'm
you-
Maura Conley, 80 Cox Street. I have a
Okay.
daughter who's a freshman here at North. I have been teaching, this is my 24th year of teaching, my 23rd year in the Nashua School District. I am surrounded by new people on my team. One, Adam is our president, so I will give him to all of you. My other colleague, Jillian Brickley, 16 years with me. I mentored her. She's a Milken Award winner. Left the district because of everything that's been going on recently. So I just wanted to give a message to the new people on my team and in this district. This is the Nashua Teachers Union. This is Nashua. We are strong, we are dedicated, we are reliable, we are thoughtful, we are reasonable. Last fall, we sat in an auditorium and we had a very thoughtful discussion of whether we should accept that one-year contract. It was not a good contract. Those who voted yes voted for one reason. We were told that this board would give us a contract by the beginning of this year so we would not have to be in this position. That you would need a year to have a very good contract set in place that would be long-term. And to hear from my colleague Adam Marcoux that he had no response all summer is highly disrespectful to the people who work for free. I mean, I have been working 24 years in this profession, and I was there with my new teachers, helping them set up, making sure I was ready before they started coming in and asking me questions. We work for free. We pay money out of our own pockets to fund what you do not fund for us here in Nashua. What I used to get from this district 23 years ago was so much more than what we get now per student. I was at a crossroads 10 years ago when we were in this situation. My daughter was 4. We were moving to a bigger house. Do I stay in Nashua? And I was like, I can't leave. I am so proud of the district I've worked in. It has to get better. She's a freshman, and I'm praying that it gets better in the next 4 years. And I'm going to tell you right now, the only reason she has had a fabulous education is because of the men and women sitting in this room right now. She has had outstanding teachers, despite all the change that we have had to go through as teachers in the curriculum. So thank you to all of you. And to the new people, stick it out with us because we can be on top again. We can be the best like we used to be. Thank you.
Oops. Okay.
Sorry, I saw an opening and went
Oh,
for it.
no, I understand I've watched how it works. Yeah.
All right. David Goldsmith, Nashua High School North, 35 years in teaching, 32 in Nashua. As I look at this inspiring sea of blue in this room, outside, in the parking lot, and tying up traffic on Broad Street, I want you to remember one word: urgency. This is urgent. This is not time to delay. This is not time to stall. Stalling is over. You have hired a new superintendent. You have hired 2 new assistant superintendents. I can't even count how many new principals you've hired. And I assume you want them to succeed. And we want them to succeed. And we want our students to succeed. But this is urgent. This cannot drag on any longer.
Can we generally agree that this has been adequate representation of your situation? Okay.
No, I don't think you've spoken enough about the paras.
Well, we'll take one more on paras then.
My name is Lucy LaBrie, and I work at New Sorrels, and I've been in the school district for 16 years. I know the people I work with, and we work hard, and these teachers couldn't do it without us. We have a whole bunch of different children. It's not like yesteryear, okay? And we work hard, and we care. And you know what? We get nothing, no respect, nothing. We don't even get to collect in the summer to say, hey, guys, you're welcome back. Come back because you do such a good job. We don't even do that. So we have to do part-time jobs in the summer. You know, give us a thanks. I love what I do. I love the children that I take care of. But please, respect us. We work hard. That's all I have to say.
Yes. Okay. No, we got to get it on the machine. Everybody here heard you say it was quick. Just remember. Okay. Just need name and address.
Is she coming down? Or? Gary Staunches. I live in Amherst. And all I want to say is do not take for granted. Hi, Grace. Do not take for granted that every young teacher is watching the procedure right now is what's going on. They're watching, they're observing, and they see, and they're questioning. We talk to them all the time. We try to keep their hopes up. They are disheartened. I mean, we've been through battle after battle. I look at people here. You know, this is my 25th year. Battle after battle about this. You know, we're here. We're not going anywhere. These young teachers are watching. They are watching everything that's going on. They feel disrespected. They work immensely hard, and we're going to lose them. We're going to lose a lot if we keep this up. That's it.
Okay, thank you. There's always going to be. Okay, can we agree that this will be the last? Okay, I think it. Well, we won't hold that against her. Just your name and address, please.
My name is Heather Bridge. I live on 3 Lone Star Drive, and I'm a student who attends Nashua High School South. And I'd actually like to thank my teachers first and foremost, but I'd also like to speak on behalf of the students. And I understand that they're passing a new return to play protocol for concussions. And as a student who suffered multiple concussions myself, I feel like we also need to have a protocol for students in the classroom as well, because we're not only athletes, but we're student athletes as well. And a lot of teachers do their best, but they don't understand the real true side effects of having a concussion and a brain injury. So I just think that we should do a better job educating the teachers and supporting our student athletes in the classroom as well as on the courts.
Okay, thank you. All right, so since you all come out, I feel like I should give you some sort of response this evening. And we're obviously not going to negotiate a contract here tonight, but I think, I don't know how much you know about me. My wife is a para in Nashua. My daughter's a speech therapist in the Boston school system. My sister retired with 37 years of middle school teacher in Maine. I had 4 children that went through this school district. I have 3 grandchildren that are currently in the school district. I was a union member for 30 years, and so I've been through stalled negotiations. I've gone a year and 2 without a contract. I've taken pay cuts. I've had rollbacks. I've done all of that. So I've been through a lot of these things that you people are experiencing, and I understand it. I've also been on the board for 12 years, and God help me, most of the time I enjoy it. But I don't do it for any other reason than I believe in education and the importance of education for all of our students, for all of our children, and it's done by teachers and paras and everybody else that provide the support for that ongoing thing here in the district. One of the obviously in those 12 years I've been involved in a lot of different negotiations, and one of the fascinating things is whenever we come to a room and everybody makes statements, it seems like the solution is simple, or a newspaper article or WMUR or something makes it seem like there's a simple solution. For those of you who haven't been involved in it, in negotiations, you know, one side comes to the table and said, here's our proposal, and they give a very impassioned pitch. They're very confident, they feel very sure that this is the best way to go, and the other side obviously says, no, we have a different view, and they do the same thing, and back and forth until you either reach an agreement or you reach mediation, or an impasse, which leads to mediation, and that's where we were. And we had a couple of sessions, and I thought we were doing well, and we had an excellent mediator. He was a gentleman who's been here a number of times. Both sides, I think, were very comfortable working with him. He was familiar with the district, and so he was very helpful, and he could no longer continue after our meeting in the middle of June. So 2 weeks later, we didn't decide. Anyway, we ended up changing administrative teams, and we have a new superintendent, 2 new assistant superintendents, and I think that it's pretty reasonable to expect they need a little bit of time to get their feet on the ground, to understand this is a pretty big district. There's a learning curve there. They started on the 1st of July, 7.5 weeks before new teacher orientation. And in that 7.5 weeks, we hired, I believe, over 100 different employees. They were involved in all of those interviews and hiring, and all of the other things that were necessary to get the district up and running again. Neither of these contracts were forgotten, but I understand it was observed tonight, you don't want to hear this, but that we had a lot of things going on in the district, as I just pointed out. It's important to remember, sometimes it gets, in the conversation, it's suggested that people are working without a contract. Everybody has a contract. The last contract remains in effect until the next contract is negotiated. To date, my experience tells me that both sides have been working very diligently, very hard, and in good faith to try and reach an agreement on the issues that are on the table. I'm telling you, it's not an easy one. It's very, very difficult. But I expect that effort and good faith bargaining will continue on Wednesday, and I hope that we are able to proceed and get to a mutually acceptable agreement on that day. But that's where we are, and we're going to make all the effort that we can to get to that agreement. We don't want to go through this any more than you guys do. Okay, do we have anybody with a public comment on anything else? All right. You're welcome to stay. But if you would like to leave, we will understand. And we'll take just a minute to give you a chance to do so. Okay, I think we've got everybody back. Okay, next on the agenda, we're going to have a presentation, and I'm going to have Dr. Mosley introduce the participants.
Nathan Burns, he is currently the interim principal at Nashua North. And then we have Keith Richards, Nashua South principal. And if I can just briefly talk a little bit about the accreditation process, because I'm not going to describe it all in one. This is not just one presentation. Both schools are up for accreditation, which is part of the accreditation process that schools go through approximately every 10 years. And so each of the schools are starting that process. With that said, this is a brief overview of that initial process. Once they have the NEAS visit come out and give us some feedback on our high schools, they will report back to the board and to the general public those findings. So I would say that this is not a one and done presentation. This is a presentation where both the principals are going to talk a little bit about the process, where their faculty is in that process, and certainly their plans moving forward.
Great, thank you. All right, there we go. So we're getting kind of friendly here, my new counterpart here. But no, thanks for having us. As Dr. Mosley said, we're just kind of brief presentation on what we're doing, where we are so far in this process. One thing to note, we did ask the NEASC Commission if we could move Nashua High School North and South visits closer, because they are decennial processes. So they did allow us kind of to, we do so many things together. So we were able to get the visits within the same calendar year, which was very nice on their part. So we're just going to go through the slides and just wait to the end for any questions. So we'll begin.
I'm sorry. Is that better? All right, so North is going through their second accreditation process at this point, and then South is obvious as well. And we've gone through several over the years, and like Keith said, it's every 10 years, we pretty much go through it. Basically, accreditation is a process that we use to provide school accountability and improvement. And it consists of 3 basic steps. So the first one is self-reflection. So teachers are going to look through, and the school is going to look through a variety of different resources, determine where we lay and stand according to a bunch of standards that we'll talk about in a little bit. There's an external peer review, where a visiting team visits each of the schools, provides some feedback on the self-reflections, and then they come back and give you a standing as far as where you sit and whether you meet accreditation or not. And then there's a continuous follow-up process. So we have a 2-year potentially, and usually a 5-year plan as well as we move forward from that.
So why do we have accreditation? Because it provides an independent, impartial evaluation, an outside team coming in, fresh eyes to see what we're doing within our schools. And it does more than just look at test scores. Often you see schools rated against each other based on standardized tests and scores. You know, this school scored higher than that school. But the NEAS process really looks at nuts and bolts of the resources we have, the practices, the personnel. It also provides a consistency and connections to other schools, K through 20, worldwide. NEASC is a wide-reaching organization. It also communicates to the community through these research-based standards. So there are several standards that we need to do a self-reflection on, see how we're doing, several indicators under each of those standards, and we'll share those with you soon. But education is never done. It's always a continuous improvement. You're always trying to do better. You never want to, rest on your laurels. And it's always great to know that you're going to have people coming in with a fresh set of eyes to give you feedback on where you are.
So there's basically 2 main components to the accreditation process. The first is the alignment to a set of standards, and we'll go through that in the next set of slides. And then also a self-reflection at the end, where teachers in the school look at those standards and determine where we sit. So the standards for accreditation, the first one is we look at the core values or beliefs and the learning expectations for a school. So we'll take a look at, say, the school mission. We'll talk to different teachers, talk to our different stakeholders within the building. Board members are often allowed into there. Community members come in and they talk about where you stand. We review and revise the curriculum. We've done a lot of work on the curriculum over the last few years, and we're pretty confident with what we've done so far, but it's always good, again, to continue to look at that curriculum, determine if we're assessing our students the way and for what we think we're assessing them, and also to determine that we're meeting their needs. We look at teacher instruction. Are we using best practices? Are we using next practices? Trying to determine what we need to do in the future, and we're having people come in and look at those practices. The visiting team visits different classrooms and provides feedback on that as well. We look at the assessment of and for student learning. We take a look at the school culture, the leadership, the admin team, school resources for learning. So are the schools getting what they need from the community? Do we have are the sites and facilities in top shape? And then we also look at community resources. So is the funding appropriate, budgetary reasons, and things of that nature fall into that.
The self-reflection process is what we've been doing for the past year at Nashua High School South. We're a little ahead of North because our site visit becomes sooner. So for the past year, our committees have been looking at the standards and seeing what our practices are. Are we up to snuff? And they're going to create self-reflection reports that will help us draw conclusions and let us know, are we doing a good job? Where are the areas of improvement? And then that will provide us with a list of strengths and weaknesses, and we create our, kind of like, you guys have talked with Dr. Mosley, a strategic plan. We create our plan on how to move forward based off the identified critical strengths and critical needs.
So during the self-study, we have basically 3 sets of pieces that we have to start with. So the first is the steering committee, and the steering committee kind of organizes our self-study. They're the overall governing body, I guess, within the school. They're going to take a look at set up the organization. They're going to set up the standards committees. They're going to process all the reports as they come in, and then they're also going to do, one of the biggest things is prepare for the accreditation visit when the outside stakeholders come in to do the visit at the schools. We also then have our standards committees that fall below that. And each standard committee is aligned to one of those 7 standards that I talked about a little bit before. Those standards committees take an in-depth look, examining the substandards within each and determining whether the school is aligning to those standards and look at, what are our strengths, what are our weaknesses. They collect evidence to prove that we're doing what we say we're doing, and they also look for the holes that we currently have and determine how we can move forward in those areas. At the end, they complete the self-study report for those indicators and then present it back to the steering committee. The third component is an Endicott survey. So South has done this, North is getting prepared to do it right now, where they send out some survey questions to staff, parents, and students, and we get some data there that we use to help move forward in the self-study as well.
So next steps, once you've done the self-reflection piece, you've given the survey, the faculty needs to approve the standard reports and the executive summaries. So we come together as a staff, each standard committee presents their findings, and we actually vote. We need to create a statement of the school's critical strengths and needs. Based on the self-reflection, we create a 2-year and a 5-year targeted plan moving forward. And then we have the external team visit who comes in and does the evaluation. So currently, just to give you an update of where we are in the process. So we're going to have our site visit March 25th through the 28th, 2018. It is currently our goal of November 30th to have all our reports written. And that way we would use the winter months to have the standard committees present to the whole faculty. Just to kind of give you an update where we are, kind of leads into some of the conversation we had previously tonight. On Thursday, I did receive a letter that effective September 18th, our committee chairs, leaderships will be stepping down. They know, our staff knows the process needs to continue and the work needs to be done, but they will no longer hold those leadership positions in those committees. So Nate and I will have to kind of work together to figure out a plan B to make sure we have a process moving forward.
And as Keith said, the Nashua North site visit is a little bit further out, so we're looking at December 2nd through the 5th of 2018. So at the end of last school year, we basically began by identifying the steering committee chairs and also the committee chairs, and we also assigned all of our faculty to specific committees. I also received a note on Friday from all our committee chairs resigning from their positions effective on the 18th. We were going to begin our work at our first early release this school year.
And that is where we're at.
If there's any questions about the process?
Yes.
So in March, when the folks arrive, it will be after the standardized testing is complete?
The SAT date for us is March 21st, so it's actually the week after. Our juniors will be taking it on the 21st.
Okay, thank you.
Going to your remark about the strategic planning that we have discussed the potential for with Dr. Mosley when he was hired, it seems to me that there might be wonderful input for that strategic planning, and I'm hoping that you're going to tell me that you're going to come up with a list for us of these that you're going to come back and give us all this wonderful information.
Most definitely, yep. And it's not me coming up with it, the best part about this is all from the staff. Yep.
Team.
Yep.
Yes. We love our team. Despite what it may appear, we do appreciate our teachers more than I can say. Thank you.
So I am consistent, if anything else, folks. So I'm curious about the external team review. You spoke of it, looking at curriculum and things like that. Will they be looking at the implementation of competency grading? Is that considered part of the
Well, they would look at our assessment practices.
Okay. And is it possible the board can get a copy of the Endicott survey when it's sent out?
Yep, so we did ours, and we have it for right now. I'm sure we could get you that data. Rob is still here, actually, who is our chair, and we can get that to them, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Information about competency grading, but I'll be happy to send you a copy.
Okay, yep. We
Yeah,
can send
I
that
just
to,
think in general, since it seems like you're kind of down the road on this, I asked for this topic tonight. Thank you, Dr. Mosley, for including it. Mr. Farrington, putting it on the agenda. But it seems like you're pretty far along and the board didn't get any advanced or, there was no heads up other than our request for the briefing. So I would ask that you be a little bit more proactive in keeping us informed, not only how you're moving through and preparing for the first one in March, but as the same process unfolds for North, that we also, nobody likes surprises, right?
Yeah, no, and I hope you don't think we were trying to hide anything either.
No,
You're more than welcome to
actually, I
come any
didn't.
night. So, yeah, we'd be more than open about the
I
process.
knew nothing about the process. For all I knew, it hadn't even started.
Mhm.
So I guess I'm glad that you're already into it and understand the structure of what you have to do. But I would just ask that you keep us in the loop on information. And I had the same question that Mrs. Ziem just asked about the strategic planning process.
One other thing, just based on that too, part of the NEAS process is that the board isn't supposed to get the self-study reports or anything until it's completed, but we can certainly give you updates along the way as far as how we're progressing and things like that.
All right, well, we'll just maybe, Dr. Mosley, you'll filter through what we can know and what we can't know, but.
A couple of things with the NES process, and I say process because it's like continuous. So right now, currently, we have I'll just forewarn you right now to the board, is that when we have individuals coming to do a site visit to, I would say, Nashua, it is our responsibility to make sure we give them room and board. We have to feed them, and it's not going down to Market Basket and grabbing a sandwich. We have to make sure that we wine and dine them, so to speak. We also have to be available as well. In other words, they may have questions for board members. They're going to have questions for us. There is going to be a discussion around strategic planning. What they're looking for is an alignment with that plan to the mission, the core values. Is that unified in terms of, they'll ask the question, unified in terms of the school, unified with the district's plan, and unified with the vision of the district. So there is a financial piece to this, that if everything goes in terms of what we're talking about, I think we're talking about, I'd say $20,000-ish, between 20, I'll just make a ballpark figure, between $20,000 to $25,000 for the site visit to come here and be part of Nashua. That's for both high schools. So it's $50,000 because it's a site visit that includes 25 for the south and 25 for the north. So that, just be prepared for that. Once they go through that process, and I say process because we don't really know what the site team is going to cite when they come to the south or to the north. They will write the report up, meet with the principal, and then share the findings, and subsequently we will get a finding. We will get a copy of that. Just to be aware of the transparency piece, that this report is public. It's public because, we share it here, but it's also public in their, on their website, NEAS. I want to just preface a couple of things. Do I think that we have the best high schools in the country? Absolutely. Please do not look at the findings. I don't even know what they're going to be. Look at it as an opportunity for us to improve, not the end-all be-all. It doesn't mean that there's always room for growth, and I encourage the board to think of it that way. It's a nice way for us to get a self-reflection piece on what we need to get better at, but also some areas where we can make improvements. NEAS has gone through, what I'm pleased to say, they have gone through a little bit of a transformation in a sense that all of those standards that Mr. Burns pointed out used to be pretty prescriptive and not necessarily germane to schools that have special circumstances. Let me give you an example. In Massachusetts, there's no CTE programs connected to the high school. They're all separate programs. In New Hampshire, we have CTE. So NEAS has actually done a very nice job with changing or accommodating those standards and those core values to meet the needs of that particular school or district in this case. It's very rare to see actually two high schools in one district. It's just rare. There are exceptions. I know, like in Massachusetts, it's Newton North, Newton South. Here we have the same kind of configuration. So just please keep that in mind when we get the results back. It's an opportunity for us to look at the things we do well, and I know we do great things here well, but it's also an opportunity for us to grow and make some improvements. And I say tweak, not change everything, but tweak what we could do a little better for kids.
And I'd just like to add that there was communication, and I can't remember when, but as I recall, I don't remember how long ago, there was a communication about these two accreditations are going to be staggered, and the request was made to them to combine them in the way that they're done, and so one was delayed for a year, and I don't remember which school. But so there have been some communications, and it may have been before you came on the board, I don't know, Howard, but there was a general awareness of what was going on for the board. Mrs. Eam?
Well, I just happened to think during your conversation that there was a very passionate teacher who came several months ago, and she spoke about the GPA and changes that were needed to our GPA. I was particularly impressed with her comments. Will the GPA be looked at as part of this process?
I think, again, it goes back to looking at how we grade, how we assess our students and things of that nature, so it may come up in the study. Sometimes things come up with the
As
visiting
I
team,
recall,
so-
she was specifically saying that she thought the way we were doing, she thought that we needed a whole new system. And it made, I wish I had a recording. You could go back and find it, because she was really very eloquent, and her points were very strategic. I think some of you might remember, I hope, that speech, because it was, some of your teachers are very eloquent, as we know from tonight. So, and she was certainly an example of it. So I just hope that, if nothing else, it will be considered.
Can I suggest, just for the board, you got something? Well, okay. One more, and then if we have any other things that have occurred to you, let's just submit them to Dr. Mosley, and he can, because I understand you're going to have the fellows back again.
Yes.
And we can incorporate that into the next presentation, if that's all right. Okay, we'll do two more, and then we'll be done. Mr. Hallwell.
Yeah, I was just going to suggest that for the board members who haven't been here when there's been one of these accreditations, there is a report from the last one that might be helpful for you to review. Then you'll know the types of things. They don't get into the details of things necessarily. It's more sort of priorities and things you need to work on. So it'd be good to look at that. I assume we have it. I don't think we have it online, but
Yeah.
I'm sure I can get you guys a copy.
I have a copy of the 2010 one for North.
Okay, Mrs. Hornsey.
Thank you. I would just like a copy of the PowerPoint. I've had parents that have asked about this, so this would be helpful for me to explain it to them.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, and if anybody else has anything else for questions for the next presentation, just please submit them to Dr. Mosley's office, and we'll get them included in the next PowerPoint. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming in. Appreciate it. Anyone know how to make this go away?
I hope we see more of you. Mr. Burns, that was good. Thank you.
Thank you, Nate.
Yes.
Right. All right. Moving right along, we come to the consent agenda. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda as it exists, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Communication, anybody have anything outside of the consent agenda that we need to consider? Seeing none, we've done the public question and comment period. Superintendent's comments. Dr. Mosley.
I will be brief. A couple things. We had a nice opening on August 28th, where all the faculty got together, and we were able to, what I call, have an entire faculty convene and really open the school year. That event doesn't happen without great people working behind the scenes. So I want to publicly thank Stacy Hines for all her work, not just to work on that day, but it took almost 2 weeks to really prepare and organize and communicate to the general public that that was going to occur. Tara and Rosie, the administrative assistants to myself, just priceless. In some ways, I think they're the boss, not me. And Garth and Donna, and especially the South faculty, I don't know if they're here or not, but thank you for taking the time to help me set up. It was a great event, and now the question becomes, what do we do next year to top that? So I'm excited about next year and thinking about that. I know there's some discussion around kindergarten. I want to reserve that conversation to Dr. McKinney as I believe he'll have more information than I will. Not that I don't want to share it, but I just don't want to kind of take away his presentation. So I will defer to the kindergarten comment until we get down, until we refer to the agenda that's coming up. Enrollment numbers were at 11,309 students district-wide. So that's encouraging. In terms of site visits, listen, I've been out in the schools. I've done some walkthroughs. It's been nothing but great. I had an opportunity to have lunch with some of our high school kids at the North here. It was a nice experience. They were very welcoming to me, so to speak. They were very nice, and it was good to talk to them. And it's also good to get out and sit with the kids and have some lunch. My next stop is the South. I'm going to have some time there as well with those. In terms of high schools, I like to kind of balance my visits. As I shared in my opening remarks to the faculty, that I plan on getting out to all of the schools before winter break. One of the things that the three of us had an opportunity to do, and I encourage all administrators to do this, is that we spent some time over at St. Joseph's Hospital. And we met probably about 12, 13 kids for our Project Search program. That is our kids who are transitioning, who are in our specialized programs, who are transitioning and learning to some great work skills. And so we spent about 2 hours there. They showed us around the hospital. They showed us their job requirement. And I can't tell you the great work that those individuals, the faculty and the kids do over there. So I want to thank them publicly for having me over there, having us over there. Certainly we're going to come back, maybe do some lunch. Certainly we're going to do some graduation. We're going to attend graduation. But thank you for the work that you do over there. Part of what I'd like to do, and I like to see if I can have an opportunity to go to elementary schools, middle schools, during off-peak times, particularly around open houses. It allows me the opportunity, some time to get to know the principals, the teachers, and within the district. And certainly I had an opportunity to stop off at Maine Dunstable Elementary School, Sunset Heights Elementary School. I had never been to Sunset Heights, and the renovation there are absolutely beautiful. Garth, your indelible impressions over at Maine Dunstable is always there, and I know that, I don't know if Kelly's here tonight, but she speaks highly of you, and that's not to take away from Jackie. It's just, she speaks highly of you. You should know that. If she spoke ill of you, she wouldn't say anything either. Thank you again. As I said before, I had an opportunity to go over Clearway as well and just say hello to the faculty there. When I stopped off at Clearway, the kids were not there, but I will be back. I have this written down, so we are slated to have another what I call productive negotiations with NTU on Wednesday, and I would like to just leave it at that. I think everything was said today that needed to be said, and certainly the administration and the school board is looking forward to that. Just a couple things. On September 8th, I attended the New Hampshire School Administration Conference. That basically, that's an opportunity for assistant superintendents and superintendents throughout the state to listen to new policies, new mandates coming down from the state, and this particular conference focused on ESSA. For those, it's Every Student Succeeds Act, information on some of the changes in regulation, and also some recommendations for reviewing and examining criminal records of individuals new to the district. Again, a nice opportunity for myself to get acclimated to new policies that are coming down the pike and procedures. So I end this presentation with just saying welcome back to all of our teachers and students. Today is technically the first full week of school. There's a 5-day here, so I encourage teachers and students to get plenty of sleep because we do have 4 more days ahead of us. Thank you.
Okay, board response to superintendent comments. We'll start over here, go around. Mrs. Oden.
Yes, I want to thank Dr. Mosley and his to assistance for getting into the schools. That's one of the things that you often hear teachers say, I'd like to see central administration in the schools. And we heard a teacher say you had been in her classroom. But I want to thank you. We knew from the site visit at Sharon that your passion is with the kids and in the schools and in the classroom. So thank you for following that, and may that continue, because that's really important to our teachers and our students. So thank you so much.
Mrs. Eam? Mr. Call? Mrs. Hohensee?
Yes, I too would like to thank Dr. Mosley and his team. I think this year has started off very smoothly. I'm very encouraged and very happy to be part of this district this year. It's very promising.
Thank you.
Dr. Murtaki?
Nothing.
Okay. We'll get our camera.
I'm just going to talk very, very briefly about the teacher contract thing. I know you guys have probably heard enough of it tonight. But just coming from the student's point of view, when I read that press release from the Nashua Teachers Union, it was very concerning, not only to myself, but many others in the school. One of the really big things was the letters of recommendation. In this school district, we really have the hardest working students. They've invested their time, their money, and their energy into public school district, into our school districts, like they haven't chose to go to BG, and sometimes that's why we lose kids in this school district. But now that there is this threat that students may not get these letters of recommendation, it's very disheartening and concerning to us. And then the other thing was with extracurricular clubs, and how some extracurricular clubs are completely optional by that of the teacher. We just brought freshmen in on their first day of school, and one of the broad themes that we do is we encourage them to get involved. We encourage them to join all these clubs. So if this happens on September 18th and a contract is not reached and these clubs aren't available for the freshmen, it kind of counteracts the message that we're trying to send. And then the other thing was, this school district is great. We have the hardest working teachers. If you put your heart and soul into this school district, you can get a ton out of it. But when conflict like this arises, and I read on a Facebook comment over the weekend, are conditions this bad in the Nashua School District? Conditions are not this bad in the Nashua School District. But this is the face that we're showing to the public when this conflict arises, and I don't want that face to be the impression that dictates us. So thank you.
Ms. Tomasetti?
There's not really a lot more that I could echo than what Cam just did, but it is sort of concerning from a student point of view that the two sort of entities in the school district that are supposed to be looking out for us and doing the best for us can't see eye to eye on something like teacher contracts, and it's sort of almost like the students are stuck between a rock and a hard place, just because I know that a lot of the people on this board really do care about students, but I also know that the teachers really care about students, and it's hard to comprehend that they can't come up with something that is sort of comprehensive and understands all stakeholders, including the students, and understanding that our future, such as the letter of recommendation, it shouldn't be a bargaining chip for anybody. So, yes, thank you.
Excellent. Thank you both. Committee on Budget, Mr. Hall, you got anything?
Sure.
How about Finance and Operations?
Nope, meeting tomorrow night.
Okay.
Which we'll be talking about budget.
Wow.
Finance tomorrow,
So we met a day too early.
Can I just say something about tomorrow's meeting? We're having a presentation from our district whiz financial analyst or analyst, and I would encourage people to look at it. We're hopefully being able to dive into the budget a little bit deeper and understand more about how the expenses are actually. Well, we know what they are, but we don't necessarily can't always summarize them in a very easy way, and the opportunity exists for that. So if you're Gary, you probably want to tune into this. I think you'll find it interesting. Thank you.
Sure. Dr. Mosley.
I just would be remiss if I didn't say anything. My comments are directed to Grace and Cameron. I know it must be upsetting to see what you saw today, and I can only just share with you that the intent of everyone here is peace. Peace in everything. And everything you heard today did not go unnoticed or didn't fall on deaf ears. We hear everyone's concerns. And I want to say that there's an old African proverb, when two elephants fight, it is grass that suffers. And I'm sorry about that. We'll make it right.
Committee on Policy. You got something for us, Ms. Van Twyver?
I always have something for you.
Okay.
We do a lot of work. Policy Committee met on August 15th, and we undertook about 4 different policies. The first one was the wellness policy, and the nurses came to talk about changes to policy JLCF, which is the wellness policy. The changes to this policy were more editorial and just trying to spell out the difference of when you can, that when you're, during the school day, that you have to meet these government regulations about nutrition and exercise and all that. There were 2 paragraphs added onto the second page of this one, and it says, any food or beverages sold in competition with a food service program from these locations must meet state and federal regulations regarding competitive food sales. They also wanted to point out the fact that during the school days, that it must be met, that you have to meet these requirements. And that's mostly what the changes were. So I recommend the adoption of policy JLCF as amended at the board, at the policy meeting.
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Hohenstein. Is there any, Mr. Kaufman?
Thank you, Ms. Van Twyver. I do have a question. I'm curious.
Mhm.
So related to PTOs and booster clubs and things like that.
Mhm.
So is the age of the bake sale over? Is that what this means?
I'm
Can the
sorry.
PTOs conduct a bake sale? Would that meet the requirements that I believe, as I read this, would they, can parents still do a bake sale to raise money?
Well, I
Is it
assume they
impacted by
can.
it?
I don't think there was any restrictions on doing it. They just have to meet the requirements of the food service program. They have to follow the guidelines.
Okay.
In other words, you can't sell cookies
That's
during the day. If you want to
So
do
if
it
they did it
night,
at night prior to an event in the auditorium,
then
that's okay?
I would assume that's correct, because
Okay.
everything here is during the school
School day, I
day in
noticed
any
that.
location.
Okay.
So if on Saturday they want to have what?
I'm sorry, I was pointing to.
We have another opinion over here.
Yes, thank you.
It's not an opinion. I just want to point out that the 2 paragraphs were actually in the previous policy. They've just been moved and deleted from the bottom of the policy.
Oh, okay. They moved
And
them.
that the policy as written was accepted in the June meeting before I arrived. It just wasn't voted on for the final acceptance.
Anything else?
Anyone else? So the motion is to approve policy JLCF as amended at the June 2017 meeting. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Ms. Van Twyver.
The second policy that we discussed was IMAH, and this actually, change to this policy came because of the wellness policy. There was a question arising about a statement on recess before lunch and withholding of recess as a form of punishment. So this is the health education daily physical activity. So item 8 under this, it was changed to read, encourage physical activity recess periods encourage recess before lunch as a best practice, and strongly discourage the withholding of recess as a form of punishment. So I move the adoption of IMAH as amended.
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Hohensee. Mr. Hallwell.
I won't be voting for this. I don't think that there is strong evidence that before or after lunch is the best practice for any particular school. I mostly agree on the withholding of recess. I think I don't think it's ever been withheld as punishment, but there are reasons sometimes where it can't happen. But the main reason I'll be voting against it is the first part of that change.
Anyone else? I'm pretty much in agreement with Mr. Hollowell. I think that policies are policies, and I think that this kind of infringes on the domain of the individual schools, and I think that should be up to those schools as to how they conduct this, and this seems to me to leave open the opportunity for people at the board to question what an individual school is doing, and so I won't be supporting that. Dr. Murataki.
Yes, so I have a question. So
sure.
In the changed statement, this does not mandate recess before lunch, but it encourages recess before lunch. Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Mrs. Hohensee.
Could we have a roll call, please?
Sure. Any other comments or questions? Okay, the motion is to, I'm sorry, Mrs. Oden.
Yeah, I just have a concern about the word strongly. The fact, encourage recess before lunch as a best practice and strongly discourage the withholding of recess as a form of punishment. I don't know of any teacher that likes to keep a child in at recess. That's their time to call parents, to correct papers, to do planning. There are times that things happen that there are consequences sometimes for severe things, and that sometimes can be helpful to a teacher, helpful to the classroom, and helpful to the individual that is given a consequence of losing a recess. Sometimes it's safety, and I don't think teachers need to be told that that is strongly discouraged. As I said, I have never known a teacher that wanted to keep a child in from recess. So I won't be supporting it for that reason.
Okay. Mrs. Hohensee.
Thank you. I'd just like to point out that the wording came from the Wellness Committee's report, their annual report, and it was taken verbatim. It wasn't something that the committee devised.
Mrs. Abodili was willing to accept that language too for this.
Mr. Hoffman. Howard Kaufman.
If I may ask Mrs. Oden a question. So if the word strongly was not there, would you support the change?
I could support it because you do want to discourage that as a first line of defense or consequence. But I think the word strongly, I think that leaves something out of the hands of teachers. And I don't think teachers need to see that word strongly because they are very cautious about taking recess away, because often kids that have discipline issues need the recess, need the time to go out, and I will leave that with teachers to decide. So this word strongly bothers me. I think our teachers know full well when it's going to be beneficial and when it's necessary.
Mr. Kaufman.
So, if I may I offer an amendment which strikes the word strongly from the text?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Hallwell. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of striking strongly from the text say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion. So that's 7-1. Motion passes. Back to the main motion as amended. Any further discussion? Roll call was requested, please.
Mrs. Oden.
Yes.
Dr. Mirataki.
Yes.
Ms. Van Twyver votes yes. Mr. Hallowell.
No.
Mr. Mosier. Mrs. Ziem.
Yes.
Ms. O'Hensey.
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman.
Yes.
Mr. Farrington.
No.
Motion passes.
6-2?
Yep.
Passes?
Yep.
One more.
I've got a couple things more. The next one was JLCJ. This is concussions and head injuries. The athletic director asks for some changes on this, and in particular, the first change was to change the title to concussions and head injuries for student athletes. She wanted to make sure that people understood that this was just for athletes. Most of the changes on the first page were pretty easy, nothing controversial there, I don't think. And then on the second page, the important change was under the section removal from play and protocol for return to play. And the second sentence, a student athlete who has been removed from play shall not return to play on the same day or until he or she is evaluated by a health care provider, and these words were added, including licensed athletic trainers for the district. That was the major change. And then down on academic issues, the second sentence, in the event a student athlete. So just wanted to clarify that this policy is to deal with athletes. So I move the adoption of JLCJ as amended.
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Hohensee. I have Mrs. Ziem and then Mr. Hallwell, and then Mr. Kaufman.
On the including licensed athletic trainers for the district, is that? Oh, excuse me. Including licensed athletic trainers for the district, is that an added expense? Do we have sufficient licensed athletic trainers to provide that service without additional cost?
We do.
Yeah, that's
Thank
been
you,
going
Mr.
on
Donovan.
for a
I'll
while.
take your word for it.
And Mr. Hallwell.
So I can appreciate why this policy was changed to say student athlete. I guess the student who got up earlier speaking about concussions, so sometimes happen not when you're doing athletics. In my daughter's case, she just ran into a door. But it was amazing how bad her life got over the next 2 months. So I guess I would ask administration to find out if there is some sort of training that we could give to teachers so that they understand it. And so my daughter was in college when that happened, and I can tell you, I can't call the names of those teachers that I'd like to call them, but we will call them professors instead. Didn't understand anything and, required my daughter to do stuff she shouldn't have been doing with a concussion. So if we can get some training, I would appreciate it, or some way of advising teachers as to what to do when that happens. And I don't know whether we need a policy that's just specific to students who are concussed, because there's words in here that sort of get at that when you have a concussion, you may look fine, but you can't remember a paragraph you just read. Thank you.
Did you want to speak to that?
Pardon me?
Did you want to speak? I
What,
thought you started to speak. Yeah.
I was wondering if we should have one on regular academic concussions, but
Well, there was some conversation the night of the meeting. You want to come up? Yeah.
Hi. So the other night when
Well,
we
just
were...
plug in your name so that
Sorry, Lisa
Jackie
Gingras,
gets it.
Athletic Director for the district. The other night when we were at the policy committee, the reason I suggested adding for student athletes to the title of this policy is if you read the policy, that's who it's about. So I felt very strongly that it was important that just by its name, if someone's looking at the policy, they know that that's who it's about. We did talk quite a bit that evening, exactly as Heather, our student from South, commented about whether it's a policy or it's a protocol of return to learn. And that's why I felt very strongly that our athletic trainers were recognized as healthcare professionals, because if Grace is on the field hockey field and our trainer says she has a potential concussion, there should be academic accommodations put in right away at that point, that Grace and her parents may not be able to get in to see a doctor for a few days, but Grace should have that opportunity for immediate accommodations based on their health profession. So.
Now, let me just, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but as
That's okay.
I recall in that conversation, there was some discussion about the classroom teachers having a better understanding of the protocol and what is required and
Yeah, so we work very closely when any of our student athletes are concussed. We work very closely with our school nurses, and accommodations are put in. We communicate with guidance counselors, assistant principals, et cetera. And it's sort of a little bit of a form, I guess, for lack of a better word, that goes out to the teachers that, you know, so-and-so has a concussion or a suspected concussion, because they may be going through the return to play protocol without having a diagnosed concussion. But until we start the protocol, we don't know. So that goes out to teachers. These are some of the signs to look for. One of the biggest things, and I know students in the room and possibly listening, the first thing students can do if suspected of a concussion is to stop using their cell phones. Stop with their iPads, stop with television, stop with anything screen. No, it's not gonna get them healthier quicker, but it is going to help them not get worse. So that's just something, so that's, you know, some of the things that we educate. I think Mr. Hallowell's idea of doing trainings for our teachers and our staff in the buildings would be an excellent idea.
would that be something we could do in professional development or an early release stage, something like that? Is
Sure.
that sufficient time to do it?
I'm looking at Dr. McKinney for that one.
Proper planning for that. Those days are already designated for other things, but we'd have to plan something. So anything's possible. It's just a question of fitting it in.
Right.
So.
Mr. Hoffman.
Thank you. Sort of along the lines of training that Mr. Hollowell spoke to in terms of staff awareness, I'm thinking in terms of parent awareness. And I had a chance, it's Heather, right? I briefly spoke and I asked if there were resources available online and elsewhere for parents, and the answer was a big yes. So I would, just like we have a coach's responsibility and administrative responsibility, I would like to see something, and can we ask to have a parent responsibility, which asks the parents to, and we maybe provide them with an information sheet about where to get this information, but it, you know, I think we should say something, parents, we really need for you to be fully informed about not only what a concussion is and everything and what you do if it happens, but understand that it's a possibility when a student athlete chooses to be in an athletic program. So that's one comment. I'm not exactly sure how it gets added. My second comment is about the parent information sheet, this little paragraph here. And I'm pretty much fine. Let me just explain what I would like to do at the end of the first sentence and see how you guys feel about it. Oh, look at the camera. Thank you, George.
No, I was pointing out that Lisa was getting her computer.
Oh, she's getting...
Sorry, I just wanted to be able to see what you're looking at.
So at the end of the first,
Mr.
there's only
Kaufman,
two
Mr.
sentences.
Can you just tell me which paragraph again? Sorry.
Yes, sorry, yeah, the one entitled Parent Information Sheet. It's the third paragraph from the bottom of page 2. It has a title, Parent Information Sheet. So let me read it, and then I will add what I'm suggesting at the end, and I'll identify it. Parent Information Sheet on a yearly basis. A concussion and head injury information sheet shall be distributed to the student athlete and the athlete's parent/guardian prior to the student athlete's initial practice or competition. And then I would like to add the following text. And before parental guardian permission is granted. So in other words, we want you to have, my intent is for the parent to have this full information before the permission is granted. And further, I would ask if we need the second sentence at all.
I don't know if it's needed or not, but I can tell you that that information, information about head injuries and treatment of head injuries is in our online registration process, and students cannot participate until that is agreed to.
Okay, by the parent.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Can I make just a suggestion here, since, and it's a question as much as anything, since we're already well into athletics, is it important for us to get this policy updated for the things that we're talking about tonight? What I'm wondering is, should we pass it and then to go back and revisit it for this particular separate thing? Or it sounds like it may be going back.
I don't think adding that is going to change what we're doing, because we already do it. And I think that was part of...
Without a policy?
Part of the revision of this policy was to just make a few minor changes, and
Yeah.
that's what we do just because it's good practice.
Great. Mr. Hallwell and then Dr. Murtaki.
So this wasn't my initial thing, but Mr. Kaufman, couldn't we achieve the same thing by saying the information sheet shall be incorporated into the parent permission sheet, which all has to be signed before they actually have their first practice?
Yes, and I thank you for changing the, I was looking, Ms. Van Twyver, she knows, I try and get rid of mays to shalls whenever possible, but I was trying to put it all in one paragraph to get rid of the second line. So yes, we can accomplish it that way if you want to just change the one word.
Yeah, that's not what so I'll let you make the motion. Does the board get a report on injuries to student athletes?
I don't believe you do.
No.
I don't, in my time here, I've never been asked for that, so.
Well, consider this a first. I'd like to see if we could get some kind of summary of injuries that have happened by sport.
You want students' names and by
No,
sport?
absolutely.
No.
I don't think we can do that,
Not by name, no.
but just kind of a summary of,
Yeah, how many?
It may take a little while to
Yeah, I'm
dig that data.
We haven't done it before.
Are
so
you talking a
take your
year, a couple of years? Do you want us to start this season to start gathering
the
that
record.
data
Curious, I
as
couldn't
we
tell you
move
right
forward?
now whether we have 1 concussion or 100.
are you looking specifically for concussions or are you looking for injuries?
I mean, I think I've seen,
There were a lot of hand injuries on Saturday. Hands was the big thing. Fingernails,
I mean, I guess
wrists.
I guess concussion is the thing that brings it to mind.
So you just want students who are concussed or diagnosed with concussions?
Can I just jump in here?
Maybe.
It's 10 minutes past 9. We've got a lot of stuff at the bottom of the agenda. If this needs to be reworked and all that, I'm sorry, Elizabeth, can we send it back to policy so we can move along?
Well, I guess I could only argue, I made a simple request. Mr. Kaufman's change is
Okay.
1 word. I think we could all get it done
Okay.
in 30 seconds.
Let's do it. We'll go with David, we'll go with Dr. Murtaki first, and then we'll take a motion.
Yes, actually, I just had 2 questions, and they both relate to the paragraph called removal from play and protocol for return to play. An existing statement, which is at the end of the first paragraph, says the student athlete shall also present written permission from a parent or guardian to return to play. So would that written permission be like a form that already incorporates some of the things that Mr. Kaufman was asking about?
Yes. If a student is suspected of having a concussion, our athletic trainers have a verbal conversation with the parent as well as send home written information on things to look for. And part of that written information is the permission from the parent to return. But just the written permission from the parent does not automatically put that student back into play.
Okay. So my second question is actually the next line. And this is part of the existing policy.
Yes.
The district may limit a student athlete's participation as determined by the student's treating healthcare provider. But as amended, that statement also relates to the licensed athletic trainer. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Ms. Hallwell.
Move to change may to shall in, I forget what line it is now. In the second line of the paragraph that starts parent information sheet. So it would now read, this information sheet shall be incorporated into the parent, et cetera, et cetera. Practice already done.
Second.
Okay.
I'm with you. Yes.
We're going to be here all night.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion passes.
Now, the first one was,
Yeah,
the
for the
main
whole
motion.
policy, right?
Yeah,
We're
the
back
whole
to the main
policy.
motion as amended, right? Anybody got anything else on that? All those in favor of the main motion as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion passes.
Thank
How's
you.
that?
Very good. I
Okay.
like that. So that's
Okay.
it. Then we also started talking on a proposed.
Thank you, Lisa.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Gengris. We also started talking on a policy on psychology, having a psychology policy. Dr. LeCare was there to address some of the questions that the proposed policy was brought up. So he has agreed to go back and talk with his psychologists to come to understanding maybe a simple policy on this. And we will continue talking about that at the next meeting. Then we also talked about policy FF, naming school facilities or an area within a facility. Dr. Mosley has asked for a small change to that policy that would allow him to do business with outside organizations, and it has been decided that it's not appropriate for this one, so FF we have coming up at the next meeting. I'll get my list out here. We will be discussing DD, funding proposal, grants and special projects, DDA, grant funds, materials and services, KCD, public gifts and donations, and KCD-R, procedures for public gifts or donations. And I believe it's more appropriate to just put that discussion in KCD. And since we're supposed to review all our policies every 4 years, I've discovered all these policies are the same subject matter, so we'll be talking about that. The next thing we'll be talking about, we'll continue talking on the proposed policy on school psychology. And then we'll be talking about JH student attendance, JHA attendance intervention protocol, and JH student attendance procedures. And then we have another one, IMGA service animals. This is required by law, so we need to update that. That is old policy 6512, which hasn't been looked at, I think, since 2002. So those will be the topics for our next meeting. And that's our report. Yeah, I think so.
Mr. Hallwell.
Yeah, just to note that the Finance Committee tomorrow night will be talking about the KHB, which is the advertising and sponsorship in schools. I don't know whether that is the area that you were thinking of.
That was.
Okay, so we can talk afterwards.
Okay.
All set. Curriculum and evaluation, Dr. Murtaki.
We've had no meetings since the last board meeting. Our next meeting is scheduled for a week from today.
Okay. Human Resources, Mrs. Ziem.
The Human Resources Committee would like to make a motion that we accept the personnel recommendations dated September 11, 2017.
Seconded by Mrs. Oden. You've heard the motion. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of approving the recommendation say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. All done?
Thank you.
Good. Liaison reports. Unfinished business. Oh, clicking right along here. New business. This summer I sent out an article that I found, the 8 characteristics of effective school boards that I thought would keep everybody occupied so that we wouldn't have any committee meetings for a while. And Dr. Mosley and I have had some conversations around board governance and all that sort of thing. And he wanted to have that topic on the agenda this evening. Here we are, Dr. Mosley, it's all yours.
Okay, a couple things. I was hoping to have this discussion probably about an hour ago. And part of it has to do with governance. I mean, there are some board members that have shared with me, like, listen, it's 9 o'clock, I want to go home. And there are other board members that say I have 15, not 15, but I have an extensive agenda items, and I want them all discussed at a meeting. So it is a challenge to accommodate both requests, and that's not to put anybody on the spot. The question becomes, how do we move forward as a district? What are we looking for? So through some reflection and some conversations, I've wanted the board to think about some things. Think about some things around governance and how we want to move forward as a district. Think about some things, how we communicate and what we want our kids to see. So in my mind, if we don't get the governance together, that we don't communicate in the way that we are able to support one another and each other, no strategic plan is going to happen. Nothing is going to move forward in terms of NEASC or anything like that. So part of what I want to do is present two options to the board. And my reaction is, and I ask the board to not necessarily give a response, but to just ruminate and think about some things, and we can come back to it at another time. I think it's important for us to think about a way that allows us to support each other, whether we agree or we disagree. So one of my thought process is that to have some consideration around using some of the resources from the New Hampshire School Board Association. Excuse me, this organization has some great resources around roles and responsibility for board members. Excuse me. They also have some information around professional services and can give the board some great insight into current legislation affecting board members and districts at law. And it also has some opportunities for new board members, whether we know this, whether we, this November, there is going to be a new school board. Dr. Maritaki is not running for re-election. There is going to be a new member, a part of us. So how do we want to welcome that member? What are some things in practice? What are some practices and some habits of mind that we want to have this new member or members, I don't know, to come onto the board? That's option number one. Option number two would be to do it internally. And that would require the board members to think about some ways in terms of how we want to do that. This would involve work sessions, and these work sessions would be conducted in public and in non-public. This is not a one-and-done situation. It's a process. I ask board members at this point, I'm not looking for a vote, but certainly if you want to share some public comments briefly, that's fine. It would come back to the board. This would be another agenda item for the next time, and then we can have a healthy discussion, and perhaps you could give yourselves or myself some direction in terms of how you want to proceed. If you select option two, there is a little caveat to this in a sense that you would need to think about a person that you could follow and be very comfortable with facilitating, having very difficult conversations. Conversation, I'd like to say, the past, the present, and the future. And they will be difficult conversations. I believe having these difficult conversations would allow us to move forward, would allow us to communicate better, would allow us in some way to be the model school board and not just a school board.
Thoughts? Comments? Mrs. Hornsey.
Thank you. We no longer are members of the New Hampshire School Boards Association, and I think as a deliberate action. So I think it would be inconsistent for us to try to use them. And I'd be more than happy at a later date to go into, why. I don't want to waste time today. If we want to do it internally, I think that would be more constructive. I think that there are serious needs that need to be addressed on the board. And I didn't know we could meet in non-public at all. So maybe it is possible that we resolve some of our differences. And it's not so much differences. I think it's the way we treat each other and the respect or civility that we share.
Thank you.
Or don't.
Mrs. Zine.
I've been thinking all night, and especially after Dr. Mosley's comments to our two student liaisons, that we have a wonderful role model in Dr. Mosley. He has exhibited, in my view, great wisdom in every communication I've seen him do thus far, to the point where I have to say I'm very impressed. So, you know, my comment is that I have not recently had the patience that I should have had, but I promise to this board that I will renew my effort and I will try to follow the role model that we have been lucky enough to find. I think that this district is indeed lucky to have him, and I personally will make a greater effort. Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Kaufman.
Thank you. I certainly support the intention of Dr. Mosley. How we get there, I think, is going to be a topic of discussion. My interest in this is one of, you know, with the project management experience that I have, it has taught me to go from the bottom up. And I think the best outcome would be one where the board kind of, if I use the word from that assessment, NIASC, whatever it is, the self-reflection thing. I think if the board were to engage in a self-reflective process, again, everything is a process, that we ourselves can identify the weak spots, the strong spots, the areas that we want to work on. And I think we can do that internally. And I'm sure we can find perhaps members of the board who can facilitate. Facilitation is not telling anybody. It's enabling a discussion to occur. Or perhaps we find other resources in the district. I'm not inclined to involve the School Board Association at this time.
Mr. Hallwell.
Well, I was just going to ruminate. So, I mean, I think it's pretty clear that option 2 will end up being the one we go with, because otherwise we'll start with a divisive issue getting us into figuring out our divisive issues. I don't concur that we can do it on our own, or that a board member, any sitting board member, can be the person who facilitates. It just doesn't work. And certainly doesn't work when you have a board that's divisive, right? So I'm sure we can find someone that we can employ the services of at not too, certainly not $7,000 that would go to the School Board Association, but I'm sure we can find someone to facilitate that.
Anyone else? I'm obviously in favor of doing it. I'm just not sure just how we're going to go about it. I think we need to have some more conversation about that question of non-public. There's not much that the board can talk about amongst themselves in a non-public setting, but we can have that conversation.
I understand that, and there are some, not to get into the weeds here, there is hurt here, and I think we need to acknowledge that. There are people that don't feel that their voices are heard, and what I see and what I feel here is a time for us to change that momentum. It's only going to be changed when we have those conversations. And the intent, whether you go with option 1 or 2, is that if I am, for instance, angry at Donna, there's 2 ways I'm going to show it. I'm going to act passive-aggressive. I'm going to, do things that are going to make her very upset and uncomfortable. Or you yell. With all that said, I think it's time to acknowledge that we need to change the tenets of some of the discussions in these meetings that the public sees and that our kids see. And whether that is talking about the past that has hurt so many of us here, talking about situations that have hurt others in this situation, that are sitting in these chairs, I think it's important. I don't want to do it here right now. All I'm asking the board to do is to think about that. We have a new member or members coming on board, and they are going to pick up the torch that you leave, or we leave. And we want them to pick up the torch of collaboration, the torch of hope. And more importantly, and I've said this 100 times, and I'll say it publicly again, peace. We need peace in this district. Nashua, the district needs peace. It's not going to happen. It is not going to happen with anyone else coming in. It starts with ourselves. So my request from the board is that we take some time to think about what we've said and what's being on the table. It'll be another agenda item that I'd like to have a fresher discussion. I say fresher because it's 9:30, and there are other agenda items that we have to get to. But 7:30 or 7:45, I think we all will be at our best, and we can make some better determination in terms of where we want to go. Thank you.
Since generally, for one reason or another, our agendas tend to fill up as we get closer and closer to a meeting, would we be better served to designate a special evening, a special board meeting to have this conversation? We can talk about it later. Okay. Yes. Okay, so Mr. Hall, would you have something?
Just going to make a motion.
Go ahead.
Move to accept the donation to Fairgrounds Middle School from the Hullinger Family Foundation, an amount of $5,000. Funds will be used to assist the autism cluster, which is $3,800 of that money, under the discretion of Erica Keeley, and the special needs students, $1,200 under the discretion of Kristen Powell.
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Hohensee. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of accepting the donation say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes, and thank you to the...
Thank you,
those
family.
folks.
Yes. Wonderful.
Thank you.
The FY18 budget new hires. Dr. Mosley, or is that Mr. Donovan, or who's going to talk about
New hires.
new hires? Mr. Donovan, were you talking the money piece?
I can speak to the money piece, yes.
Okay.
Due to the, as we all know, the plan for the kindergarten was to repurpose teachers and not have to hire any. But that's very difficult to decide back in May, when you don't know all the numbers come this time of year. Well, the superintendents, let's just call them as a whole, met and decided that to meet the demands of a couple of schools' class size, where there were 27 students per class as school began, they suggested that we probably need 2 new teachers, one at Broad Street and one at New Searles. So basically, I just put together, they can speak more to that, but I basically said, okay, where will these funds come from? If you recall, we did have an extra bus in the transportation line, that because originally we were going to bus kindergarten students, then we decided against that. So that's what that $56,000 is. And the other $35,000 is coming from the attrition line. So, and we will have, money in that line.
So just to clarify a couple things, thank you. I'll do the Broad Street piece. We had class sizes. When you're doing enrollments for the beginning of the school year, you just don't know who's walking through those doors. And so we have class size for grade 1 is about 27 students. Even at that number, that's pretty high. So we were hovering very close to that number at Broad Street. So anytime that goes close to, I would say more like 25, because you never, it's plus or minus 2. It's the district's responsibility to make sure that class size doesn't exceed that 27 students in grade 1. So as a result of that, we added a teacher to address that class size. Otherwise, we would have to compensate the teacher. What's the phrase is that, Gar?
Class overage.
Overage for the, and it's financially it's better for the district to pay to hire a new teacher than to pay for the overage. For New Cyril's, we had the same situation. Mr. Harding took a special education current teacher who was interested. Is that you? What's your name? Hi, John Montel. And moved to first grade, is that correct, Jen? Okay, you went to the kindergarten position and that your position became open. Okay. So at any rate, long and short of it, both moves were the result of class size. And the district, rather than paying the overage, it is more financially stable and better for kids as well to add another, or in this case, we repurpose a teacher over at New Cyril's.
Mr. Kaufman.
Dr. Mosley, are there any other associated expenses, unintended expenses that we've had so far relative to the kindergarten rollout?
There are, Dr. McKinney is going to talk a little bit about that.
Oh, okay.
I would say it's a great opportunity for us to do some reflection as we start to roll out the kindergarten program. And I say opportunity to do some reflections because when I look at reflection, it's refinement as well. So we're going to talk a little bit about that in the presentation.
Thank you.
Ms. Zoden.
Yes, I have a question. I can remember asking Mr. Boucher about where the money would come from if we needed more paras for kindergarten. And that amount from the busing that we had originally attended to bus students, they said that money could be used for paras. So if we're using it for teachers, I certainly understand that, but I'd like to know if we have any money for paras for the kindergarten, should we need that. I don't know, did you receive a transition document from the previous administration for kindergarten?
One of the things I think it's important to share, the answer to your question is that we're still investigating that, and I would say that that has been a challenge to locate. Moving forward, the one thing I think about with kindergarten classrooms is a sense of equity. And so my reaction is, and what we're assessing is, if you walked into a kindergarten classroom at Bicentennial, does it feel the same as Maine Dunstable? Is there still that level of support for paras? We want to make sure that all of the classrooms have the same support in terms of paras and teachers and class size. We don't want to have, and this is for an example, a high number of kids for kindergarten classrooms at Bicentennial at class sizes of, I don't know, I'm just throwing out a number, like 23, and then have something at New Cyril's at like 10. That's not going to work. So what we found is that that we're still assessing to see where there's a sense of equity. There was no plan passed to me by the previous administration around all-day kindergarten. So I want to just credit Dr. McKinney and Donna, and more importantly, I would say that the principals have done a phenomenal job. Every single elementary principal has done a phenomenal job of making sure that the full-day kindergarten has been successful and off the ground for our kids. And I get a lot of complaints. About buses and things that aren't going well. But one of the things that our principals have done is made sure and communicated that the full-day kindergarten is making it work, even if we didn't get that plan. At the end of the year, the principals got together and planned and came to myself and to Garth and said, these are the things we need to think about. And so I'll make the final statement of it is a process. When we're thinking about budgeting for next year and we think about budgeting this year, we'll make the adjustments to make it work for kids and make sure there's equity in the schools.
Ms. Zoden.
Yes. I just want to apologize to you as a board member that you did not get a transition plan for the full-day kindergarten. I remember sitting with you at central office with, I think, 3 other board members when you said that was your number one priority, is to get a transition plan for all-day kindergarten. And I'm very sorry that you did not receive that. I think our district should have had it. I think our administration should have had it. And I think as a board, maybe we should have asked for it so we could see it too.
If I could just say, the board did receive a report dated June 22nd, the status report for full-day kindergarten, wherein they talk about staff development, furniture and supplies, outstanding issues, and the first thing they note is we anticipate that some additional paraprofessional support will be needed. Principals will pursue this issue with the incoming administration once actual enrollments are known. And I think we had another something, but we had information, and I don't know if everybody's aware, it was pretty close on tables and chairs up to the last day or so before school opened, because there was, I don't know, if it was because so many schools were adding kindergarten and needed small equipment in their schools, but there was an acknowledgement.
Can I just get back to something? When we talk about personnel matters, when we come back as a board around strategic planning, this is a great opportunity to do that. We need peace here.
Mm-hmm.
And by pointing out what's happening here, it doesn't give us peace. It doesn't matter anymore. We're moving forward. Let's talk about something else.
Mrs. Eam, you got something else?
I'm a parent, but I have to tell you, I want to again say, I remember in my 12 years on the board, watching our class sizes. Every budget, we had to fight to keep our class sizes at a point where they were reasonable. I'm not talking about where they were small. I'm talking about something manageable. We had to fight. I remember those fights vividly. And I just want to again say to the listening public, to those of you that have the patience to sit here all night, that this is an indication of the kind of leadership we're going to get. And if I'm not here next time, it's all right, because I feel like I can leave here now and we have a leader. And for that, I am very grateful. Because we didn't have to say to him these classes. He came to us and said, we need this. This is what is acceptable. It's not what's a Cadillac. This is just bare minimum that we need. And I think that shows leadership, and I am so grateful. I can't even tell you. I will go home feeling much better. Thank you.
Hoffman?
Thanks. So I just want to say, when I saw this, my first inclination was to vote no, because of the past feelings that I had about kindergarten and all that stuff. But in the Mosley model of peace, I offer my vote in support of these two hires, and I'll try to bury my hatchet on kindergarten. I'll just put it that way. Thank you.
Have these people already been hired?
The 2 kindergartners.
There's 2 new hires that we're talking about. That's where we are on the FY18
No,
budget.
they have not been hired yet.
Okay, right. So you're looking for approval to hire them tonight? Is that what we're looking at?
Looking for money from where it's coming from, right?
The memo says where the money's coming from. We're looking for approval to add them to the fiscal year 18 budget.
Okay. Mr. Hollowell and then Mrs. Hohensee.
Move to approve the funding for the shifting of funding to allow for the 2 elementary school teachers.
Second.
I heard somebody over here second? Mrs. Oden seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Moving right along, Daniel Webster College. Want to kick that off?
So we heard a presentation from Mr. Cookson briefly this earlier this evening. We have tentatively scheduled 2 tours of the Daniel Webster College for board members. One of them is going to occur tomorrow, and the next one we're tentatively scheduled for Tuesday the 19th. I just want to say to the public, the school board is just exploring. That's all that I would recommend the school board to do. Exploring the facilities and seeing what it has to offer. By our exploration, it's not an endorsement. It's just an exploration, and that's it. So, and it's an ongoing conversation around some of our needs as a district. People are well aware of some of our programs we have off campus, and this is part of us doing our due diligence to make sure that we have facilities for kids.
And if I could just add to that, the difficulty in all of this is the window that we find ourselves operating in as regards the Daniel Webster College facilities. And it's more, well, there are lots of different pieces that are going on in the district right now. There's the question of Brentwood, and if Brentwood comes back to the administration building, where does the administration go? We went through that conversation earlier this year and thought it was going to be Burke Street, and then that has fallen apart, and so we're back at square one on that. And then beyond that, we've been looking at and having preliminary discussions about the next schools for renovation, and that would be Mount Pleasant or Elm Street. And the early figures estimates that are coming in on Elm Street, for example, I think the last estimate was $48 million for renovation, and then there was an area that they had questions about that they needed to address further regarding floors in the oldest part of the building, and they needed more time to study it because there was some question if they started getting into the floors, were they going to have to go outside and support the outer walls, because wondering whether or not the floors were an inherent part of the structure that holds everything together. And so that tells me there's a potential for it going quite a bit higher than 48 million. And when you ask them how much does it cost to build a new school, state-of-the-art, air-conditioned, everything current and up to date, it's around 42.5, I think was the number they told us, plus land, and we've got some land around. And so we need to address that we need to have at least that conversation, my own view, about Elm Street, and if that number comes in, the final number comes in at $50 million or more, is that a good way to spend our money, or do we have to, or should we consider something else? And we're also looking at it not only from the structural standpoint and bringing it up to current codes, but also there was a study being done, and I don't know if we've seen a final report on the educational aspect and how the school conforms with current recommendations as far as class size and technology and all that sort of thing. And so all of those pieces, I think, are things that we need to consider, and it's a conversation we need to have, I think, whether it's around Daniel Webster or some other answer. Mrs. Zine.
One of my concerns is that if, and it is a concern, and that's why at this point, I am in favor of analyzing it. And that is that if we do a $15 million bond for the Art Center, and then we do a 23, whatever it was, $1 million bond for the Daniel Webster, then if we end up wanting to do something to Mount Pleasant or Elm Street, will we have bonding ability to do that? Or are we bonded out, and will it be 5, 10, 7, 8 years before we, and that's a question I don't know the answer to. I think the question that Mr. Farrington posed was a good question as well. And so I think those are the reasons that in my view, we should consider looking at it in its, but if they're going to make the vote on the $15 million tomorrow night, then I hope they will have an answer to that question tomorrow night anyway, or that's what I would be looking for. Thank you.
Mr. Hall.
So two things. Even if they do vote to allow the bond for the Art Center, if they later on chose not to do that, it's not like they're issuing the bonds that day, right? So that there's time for them to review. In the interest of brevity, I will just say everything Mr. Farrington said. He and I had a conversation just prior to Alderman Cookson contacting I think almost everybody on the board about DW College, and just looking at that place and saying, well, you know, that might be a place that things could work where maybe you could meet multiple needs. I don't know that we can. I look forward to the tours so that we can get a better understanding, and I think the cost of doing a preliminary analysis seems to make sense to me, and Mr. Donovan will jump over that table over there, but I guess I would say we have a capital reserve account. It's not a huge sum of money. The board could decide to do that analysis. Obviously, if the Board of Aldermen isn't in favor of it, then it's probably not worth spending the money. I'm just saying that's an alternative way to get those funding dollars.
We are going to...
Go ahead. Sure.
What I would just say is that we are going to be responsible for securing an architect, kind of going through the process to make sure that this is feasible for the school district. And as the chair, Mr. Farrington shared, is that it's a very aggressive and short time frame for turnaround. So the first step is to kind of go out there and review the property. I just want to be very clear that I do not want this endeavor to interfere in any way with the mayor's initiative around the performing arts. It's separate. And so this is the first step in terms of where the school is and exploring different options.
So I remember when we did interviews, there was a story, and it may have been during your interviews, Dr. Mosley, I'm not real sure, but one of the candidates was talking about they had put out a call in the community and said, you know, people volunteer to do things. If there's an architect out there who would like to volunteer some of their time, we'd be real interested in that. That's my little message now. I don't know if that was at your interview, but there was someone who spoke about an architect who had contributed their time to the district that they were in, which of course was not ours. So sometimes doesn't hurt. If you're out there and you're an architect and you're willing to contribute your time, keep us in mind. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else on Daniel Webster? Everybody's in agreement that we should do the tour and see how the aldermen vote tomorrow night and make our decision based on that? Okay. That brings us to full-day kindergarten rollout. Mr. Coffin, you going to do this presentation, or is this your request?
No, it was my request for information.
Okay, who's going to do
Dr. McKinney?
Dr. McKinney? All right.
Thank you, Dr. Mosley, and thank you for the opportunity to talk about full-day kindergarten. In your packet, the last sheet there gives an enrollment and capacity report, and I apologize, the revised version needs revisions. It's not completely accurate, so I'll send another one to you tomorrow if that's all right. But just talking in generalities, we have about 40 kindergarten teachers, about 764 kindergarten students, all class sizes below 20 students. Some schools are at capacity, while others do have some capacity for some additional students. We've been monitoring the enrollment over the course of the summer. It's been fluid. We've had people that have signed up early on and then kept with their plans, and others that have changed their plans going through the summer. We have 8 new classrooms at 7 schools. We've equipped those classrooms with furniture and curriculum materials that they need in language arts, reading, and math. We've visited all the full-day kindergartens. I met with the principals. I've been in and walked through the classrooms. To your point there, the furniture, there was some challenges with the vendor and getting the materials there in an expedited fashion, and we've had some probably 2 to 3 challenges with materials that showed up that need to be returned and exchanged that were damaged during shipping. So kudos to the teachers and the principals for having a plan B and going with some other furniture until the new equipment arrives. We've also added some additional assessments into kindergarten, namely, no pun intended, letter naming, letter sounds, and phonological awareness that'll be done to all kindergarten, first grade students 3 times a year. I'll be walking through the classrooms and visiting in the schools, usually 2 to 3 schools a week. I even was the royal reader at New Searles last week, probably the highlight of my week. Yes, I made royalty. And it's an ongoing agenda item during our elementary principals meeting. So we're going to be evaluating this as it goes forward, and we're going to be building a plan and revisiting it for next year. I think it's a time for us to evaluate what these assessments show us and what the data shows in terms of readiness and what the profile of a first grader is based on coming through kindergarten. We're going to review the schedules at all the elementary schools for how kindergarten is laid out. And going forward, there's a need for a space assessment. Schools like Bicentennial are at capacity. There's no space there. So if you wanted to add a kindergarten space there, we'd have to relocate some of the programs or a program that is there. Another issue that was spoken about earlier is paraprofessional support. Some schools have 2 kindergartens with 1 para, some have up to 4 with 1 para, and there are a lot of needy young children that are coming in. This is their first school experience. So looking at that and equitizing or making equitable across the district, really a great standard would be 1 per classroom, but I know our limitations. And if we continue to add more kindergarten classrooms, there would also be a need for a TIA and expanding the specialist schedules and giving teachers their planning time. Right now we have some library media specialists and other teachers that have absorbed that for this year. And like was said earlier, the principals and the teachers really are making it work with what they have. Another issue that was spoken about earlier is also, busing. Is that going to be coming forth? For a school like Bicentennial, again, the traffic pattern is considerable. The parents and the students are adjusting to a new traffic pattern and the drop-off, but that drop-off right now is backing up, and it's a congested area during that 20 minutes of drop-off, so something to consider as well. But in the end, I'd like to thank the city and the district and the classroom, and most importantly, the teachers who've made it happen. They're the ones that make the magic happen every day for the kids, and when I've done my walkthroughs, I see happy kids, I see movement breaks. Of course, they're reading and learning, but they're adjusting as well. It's a full day experience, everything from going through the lunch line and punching in your number to knowing where to go. And I saw one class on a scavenger hunt looking for Pete the cat. So the teachers have done a nice job orienting the kids to the schools and making them acclimated. But in fairness, it's been a journey over the 8 to 9 weeks to put together 8 classrooms with everything they need to have everything start. And, it wasn't perfect, but I think we've done a nice job with the willingness of great partners in the principals and the paras and the teachers to really make it happen regardless for the kids on the first day. So they've had a handful of school days so far, but we're going to keep it on our agenda. Our first meeting is next week, so we're going to have a discussion with all 12 elementary schools and how we're doing. So.
Great. I was at Birch Hill the other day dropping off grandchildren and saw kindergartners trooping along in their little line, and there's nothing cuter in the world than that. Nice, orderly little ducklings. I got lots of questions I'd like to ask, but I understand today was only the 5th full day that they've had, and so we'll wait and let things get settled down a little more. What else? Anything else?
Can I ask a
Mrs.
question?
Hohensee.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
You've got a maximum of 20 for kindergarten class, and you've got 21.3 and 21.5. So those kids are going to be moved around to get under the max? That was our understanding during the budget period.
So a couple of things I was going to just say. There were some, I would say, misconceptions out there. And those numbers, I use the word, those are fluid numbers at times as well. We've been in school for approximately 4 days. Just a couple of FYI. And I want Mr. McKinney to respond to it. So I guess my question is just a general question. It's a rhetorical one, but I just have to ask the question. We've had kindergarten classrooms fill up in neighborhood districts. So in other words, if I live in Broad Street, I'd like to use that as an example. We've had people who have come to the Broad Street community. They're new, they've moved there, and they couldn't register for a kindergarten classroom because it was full. So what that does is we have to place them to another kindergarten classroom. So Dr. McKinney, can you talk a little bit about what that process is and what we do with that 1 or 2 students?
So when a neighborhood school reaches capacity, we assign that student to the next closest neighborhood school for that one school year. So they attend that school for the understanding for that one school year, and then after that, they return back to their home school, only because of capacity. And can I just make one other comment here? The numbers that are running high, you're also, that last column there, we have some students with special needs that are being included and coming in and out of those classrooms during some of those times. So those numbers might be impacted by those students there. But again, I don't believe these numbers to be completely accurate, so I'd like the opportunity to review them again and send them to you tomorrow. But when I review them before the meeting, there's some changes that need to be made to the sheet.
So with that said, it's not we're not, I just want to be very clear to the public and to the board. Understand that there are families that are new to the district. There are families that are moving throughout the district. So it usually takes about 2 to 3 weeks before the dust settles, before we can make some adjustments. So understand that those numbers, next week it could be 19 in one classroom. Another week it could be 22, and then we have to make the adjustments. So I just want board members to be aware of that. The other piece, Dr. McKinney, I just want to ask, and if it's premature, that's fine. I know at the curriculum meeting with Dr. Murataki, there's going to be further discussion around the kindergarten piece, which we're going to come back to at a later date. So the question is, and a little bit about the paras, there's a sense of equity that we want to make sure that all of the classrooms have. So I don't know if you can speak to that, or should we hold off until you have that meeting with Dr. Murataki and we can talk more about that?
I'll just comment briefly. I've been compiling information around the number of paras and the capacity at all the schools. And I'd like to come to a place where it's equitable. So that would be a conversation in curriculum and evaluation. I can come back to that. In regards to your memo, some of the pieces that I've inherited are not as clear as I like. So I'd like to put together a plan that outlines it a little more in detail, because we couldn't use some of the resources that we had. We've added first grade classrooms, so the opportunity to equitize or add paras here or there to make it even wasn't available to us. I also want to recognize, to your point around the change in the homeschools and kids going somewhere else, this process is also a change for our secretaries and student services, because we went from a half day, we kind of had a wait list program, and then people would always go somewhere else and find a full day program and not want to take their seat, or they may want AM because of childcare, or PM. All kids who came were not waitlisted. They all had a seat in the Nashua School District. It just, if they got to capacity, it may have not been in their home school, but they still were a full-day kindergarten student for that 1 year at another school. And we've had instances even where people made a reservation or registered to come and were not present during the first 3 days of school, and then we had students return back from, where we assigned them back to their home school. So it's still a moving process right now, probably for another 2 weeks.
Mrs. Hornsey.
Do we have half-day students? Is there provision for that, whether they want to do mornings or afternoon? And I'm sure we'll go into more detail on next week, but in terms of a separate curriculum, or is it the same curriculum and they just abridge it because they leave for the other half of the day?
When I was referencing half-day, I was speaking to last year prior to full-time.
Yeah.
Right now, everything is a full-day program. All our plans are towards a full-day program. If a parent were to come, that would be something I'd have to look into.
So there's nobody that's asked for a half-day so far?
No, ma'am.
Okay, because the state law that Dr. Murataki's legislature just passed required us to make that provision if a parent did want it. A half-day program of some sort. It didn't get specific.
I haven't had a request. If I do get one, I will let you know, but I called around today. The overwhelming feedback I'm getting from parents and teachers is positive, but if I do get a request for a half-day program, I'll be sure to let you know, and the board.
Thank you.
Just two quick things. This overflow, the handling of more students coming in than the school can handle, that's the same way we handled it in previous years with half-day kindergarten. There's no real change.
Exactly the same, yes.
Okay. And the other thing is, we really wait until October 1st or whatever for the final, the lock-in on our counts, because so we're still expecting some flexibility in our counts, and even after October 1st, there'll be flexibility.
Hopefully, yes.
Yeah. Mrs. Zine.
When their community school is full and they go to another school, has that been an issue? Are we paying for that transportation, or are the parents doing it, or has it been an issue?
I don't believe it to be an issue that I've heard of yet. There are some where there are siblings involved, but those are rare cases where they could get carpool or ride with other kids. But usually we try to keep them as close. We have a
Yes.
district map and try to keep them as close as we can to their home school.
Thank you.
Mr. Kaufman?
I was interested in what you said about, well, at least for the first year, they would go back, if there was an overflow and we had to place somebody at an adjacent school, not the nearest one to home, that they do come back the following year, which I really like that. But I was curious, is that same thing hold true if capacity, I wouldn't think you'd want to move the kids back once they're placed in this other school, but if capacity for some reason opened up in their neighborhood school, is there would they go back, or they would stay in the school where they went on the overflow originally?
You mean for this current year or going into first grade?
Right now.
That's
for
happened.
kindergarten.
So if a school was at capacity and the overflow or the additional students were assigned to another school, and there were students that didn't arrive that first week, then we went back in the order that those students were
Okay.
reassigned and brought
Great.
them back.
Thank you.
Yep.
Great. Good to hear that.
Mrs. Oden?
Yes, when we just approved the hiring of two teachers, a kindergarten teacher and a first grade teacher, $35,552 came out of the account that has the attrition in it. How much money is left in that account?
Well, that's an estimate that we do during the budget season, so it's not, I don't think, left. The amount we expect in attrition is higher than we have budgeted. I guess that's a way to answer that question.
So there's more money in there. If we had to hire some number of paras, that might be a source for the...
Possibly.
Okay.
Let's be very careful with that.
Okay.
Make a commitment.
There's other
please.
things happening that we need, so possibly, yes, I'll leave.
Okay.
Thank you.
We all set on the kindergarten?
Thank
Well,
you.
the clock on the wall says it's 10:05. We've been enjoying ourselves for 3 hours here. That's everything. Mr. Kaufman?
I do have some new business that I'd like to bring forward tonight.
All right.
Thank you. I'd like to bring forward several policy-related proposals. Some of these are updates to existing policies, and several others are new policy proposals. I ask that they be referred to the appropriate board committee for discussion and review. For efficiency, I would like to offer 3 successive motions to accomplish the referral. I've already given Ms. Van Twyver a copy of my motions, and the chairs who are impacted by this I've already spoken to them. So I move that policy proposals BEDH, which is public participation at board meetings, GBEA, professional ethics, ECA-R, school safety procedures, BIA, new member orientation, something I call no phone, student cell phone use policy, CM, annual meeting, HE, school board negotiating rights and duties, be referred to the policy committee for consideration and review.
Seconded by Ms. Hohensee. Mrs. Ziem?
This may be a rabbit, but it brings to mind Dr. Mosley was talking about the governance, and one of the things that I would like us to look at in this governance committee that we have, or whatever form it takes, is how items are added to our agenda. I think it's nebulous. In my mind, it is anyway, and I would like at least a cursory discussion during the governance meeting on it. Thank you.
Anyone else? All those in favor of what Mr. Kaufman said? You got it? ahead.
Could you give me an estimate about how big these policy changes are? Like, if you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5
Do you still have the
new,
list in front of you?
right here in front of
Okay.
me.
So the updates are updates, so there's not a lot of
So those are
changes in
minor
there that-
changes?
Yes.
Okay, and what about the new ones?
The new ones are new, so you haven't seen those before.
I know, but can you estimate, is it a major deal or a minor deal?
Well, knowing what we do in policy, it's probably a major deal. Doesn't have to be, but, I mean, these are new things to the district, so.
I'll just kind of put some things out there. It's 10:10. We're looking at policy right now at 10:10. I don't think anything's going to come good of this right now. And for us to do this again, I want us to think about governance and what we want to demonstrate. No one had an opportunity to look at this and not to take away from what you're doing, but it's not going to get us to a place where we're going to agree. I don't know. Maybe that's a discussion for the board, but I think there's more questions about it. It's not like it's not warranted, but I don't, and people can disagree with me, I'm fine. I don't think we're going to have a healthy, spirited, and thought-out discussion given the timing of where this agenda item is located and our capacity to hold our attention right now. So it might be prudent of us to think about another venue to explore this proposal.
Okay, let me just jump in there just a little bit, because I had the same thing here. I pull up, and I've raised this before, the charge of the policy committee. The committee will work closely with the superintendent and his or her designees to develop policies to address issues brought forward by the administration, by changes in state or national regulations, by changes in existing law, or by district-wide problems. So my preference would be that Mr. Hoffman talk with the administration about these and the need for all of these, and because as I hear this list, this sounds like it's big, and I'm totally in agreement with Dr. Mosley. This is no time of the night to be doing this. Ms. Van Twyver.
I have two things. If there is such a meeting, I would suggest that the chair of the policy and also the administration's representative be in that meeting so that we hear it all at the same time. And number two, I have a question about it. The last line of this paper that you gave me says, a copy of these documents have already been sent to the support staff.
I gave Tara a copy this morning when I was in the district office.
Of all these?
Yeah.
Okay, could I just request?
Can I comment, please? Since I'm the one being cut off tonight.
I'm not being cut off, Howard, but go ahead.
Actually, it feels that way. It may not look that way to you, but it feels that way to me. And I think if Mr. Farrington kept reading that policy, it also says that any board member may bring forth a policy change, as well as the public at any time, to the board for consideration and referral to the committee. So I think if you keep reading in there, you'll find that this is the preferred way for a board member to bring a policy update, new policy, to the attention of the board by asking correctly, procedurally, that it be referred to the appropriate committee. So that's what I'm trying to do here tonight. I put a lot of time and a lot of effort on my vacation. That's what happens when it rains, is you start to change productive. A lot of these things that we haven't discussed yet are actually quite relevant to some of the board conversations, discussions, actions that we dealt with over the summer that are actually quite needed in the district. And I think cutting this short is doing a disservice to the board because, and here's my issue, is by delaying consideration or even referral of these to the committee, that effectively delays any action on these things by a month or two. And some of these things should be acted on promptly. One of them happens to be new member orientation. If it takes 2 or 3 months for us to do a policy, that puts us right up to the end of the calendar year when we will have a new member. So I ask the indulgence of the board to just let me bring these things forward, refer them to the committee. I'm not asking anybody here tonight to evaluate anything. I'm asking you to just refer them to the committee, which is the proper procedure of the board.
There's quite a few on here. I mean,
Okay.
it's a lot.
But Dr. Murtaki and then Mrs. Hornsey.
Yes, thank you very much. Actually, it's now about 10:15. I'm inclined to agree with Dr. Mosley. I'm feeling rushed on this, and I think I'd prefer Mr. Kaufman to bring this back at a future meeting. That's just my opinion.
Mrs. Hornsey.
I'd like to offer a compromise to make everyone happy. I think it is 10:15 and everybody's tired. Perhaps Mr. Kaufman could email those relevant policy proposals to each committee chair, CC the board, and it goes to committee. It doesn't have to go through new business and then make a motion and then send it. We'll just send it to committee. And the committee can decide when it can fit it in and to have those discussions in the committee. And it would save us time at the full board.
That's acceptable. But I do want to mention the policies publicly that I am trying to bring forward, because I think they're important for people to know what they are. Right now, you've rejected the discussion based upon a half of a list. I think the other half of the list is as important as the others. And if you speak to governance, governance is about letting people speak. And if you're going to run your meetings by the clock, then I think you have to question, we have business to occur here. It's not going to go away. So if we don't do it tonight, we're going to have to do it another time. And, here, every board member has the right to place items on the agenda under new business. And then we speak to what the deadline is. Items not included on the agenda may be brought up under new business by any board member. And then the name of the board member making the agenda request shall be included on the agenda request. Are we going to follow our board policies or not? And I am following the policy of how to bring new business forward and asking that it be referred to committee. We could have been out of here had you just voted on the first one and allowed the discussion to continue.
Mr. Hallwell, briefly, and then we're going to vote on the first motion.
Yeah, it's just late at night, Howard, so we just don't want to take up new business. I guess I would argue that what that language means is to notify the board that that's going to be on the agenda so we can see our agenda. I think to Mrs. Ziem's point, knowing what your agenda is means you might have removed some things if you thought you were going to have a discussion about something else. When you make a motion, people can discuss it. So that's all we're saying.
Okay, so I don't want to get in the back and forth. We're going to vote on this. The motion is to move BEDH, GBEA, ECA-R, BIA, no phone, CM, and HE referred to the policy committee. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No.
No.
So
Roll
that
call.
would be about a 5-3.
Roll call, please.
Okay, roll call, please.
4-3.
Mrs. Oden?
Yes.
Dr. Murataki?
Yes.
Oh, geez, it's the wrong sheet. All right. Ms. Van Twyvers votes no. Mr. Hallowell?
No.
Mrs. Ziem? Mrs. Hohansey?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mr. Farrington?
No.
1, 2, 3 noes, right?
Yeah, so it's 5-3.
5-3.
Motion passes. Howard? Excuse me, Mr.
Thank
Kaufman?
you. So I move that policy proposals BDEB, which Human Resources Committee, what I call exit, end of employment policy, and an exit R, which is an end of employment form, HP staff job actions, and HPA staff job actions, unauthorized staff absences be referred to the HR committee for consideration and review.
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Hohensee. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. 5-3. Motion
And finally,
passes.
the
Finally,
third motion is I move that policy proposals IHAK, character and citizenship education, and NOBOOK, which I've named myself, use of online educational resources, be referred to the curriculum committee for consideration and review.
seconded by Mrs. Hohensee. Seeing no, Mrs. Ziem.
I would like to make the point that when you have that many going forward all at one time, I am concerned. Again, I go to my point. That was why I thought that it should be part of the governance discussion. I think there are a lot of aspects to it that need to be thrashed out. I think, for instance, if you have a policy and it states that it has to be done this way, and then the chair of the committee isn't doing it that way, then does it fall on the chair of the full board to come back and enforce it? I think there are a lot of details that, so I am concerned that we are doing this. I guess that makes me think that maybe I shouldn't have voted for it because there's too many for one. First off, how do you pick a priority when you're putting things on policy? How do you pick those policies? Isn't that a governance issue that needs to be resolved so that every board member knows how it's done and it's something that we've agreed to? And I'm not saying, I think consensus rules. Doesn't have to be my way. I think consensus, if I lose, I lose. But I would like to see us discuss it.
Well, I would like to
Thank
speak
you.
to it, please.
Well, go right ahead.
The way it works in policy, and I don't know the other committees, is the fact that we have state laws that change. So we get papers down that says you have to change these. Some are mandatory and some are not. The second way it goes is whether the superintendent feels it's important enough to put it into practice. And the third way is whatever's left over that we get. And that's the policy that has been implemented ever since I've been the chair. And we just finished up, or the last one that was required by changes to the laws in 2015 is the animal, thank you, service animals. That will be the last one. But then 2016 and 2017, there may be other, those things have to come first because some of them are mandatory. So.
And thank you. I appreciate the clarification. Truthfully, policy is not a committee I like, so I've avoided
I
it.
happen to like it very much. I enjoy it.
Okay. Let's stay focused here.
I'm
The
saying
motion.
I appreciated it. I
Okay,
did.
the motion is, I think we're still on IHAK and NOBOOK, are the two that you want to advance to curriculum? Did we voted on that?
Curriculum, yeah, there's
Yes,
two.
I thought we voted.
We did vote? Say another 5-3 vote?
Yeah.
We didn't vote on the last one.
I don't think we did vote on the last one.
Can we vote?
All
on
those in favor of advancing those to curriculum committee, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
5-3, motion passes. Anybody else have new business? Public comment, 15 minutes. Mr. Marcoux.
Really?
What is this?
Adam Marcoux, President of the Nashua Teachers Union. I live at 4 Jalori Lane. I now fully understand why you haven't talked about our contract yet. Under RSA 91A, I formally request a copy of all those policies that were just proposed to go to committee. The titles alone make me queasy. So I would request those be sent to me at the union office.
I'd like to see them too.
Oh, good. Everyone would. I think the one thing that I'll say about why the membership gets so upset. Last school year, we had 2 teachers either win Teacher of the Year in their department. One was music, and then there was a runner-up. I want to say she was an art teacher. And we do a good job acknowledging the students in this district at the board level, but there was not one mention of those teachers at the board level. And that's unfortunate. There was something in e-news, and that's the district acknowledging it. There's a difference I see between the district and the school board acknowledging our teachers, our kids, our high performers, our winners, our whatever you want to call them. My union did a lot of good things in this district last year, and we promote them, we share them, and we hear little pitter-patter. But as soon as my teachers and my paras drop district committees, all hell breaks loose in this district. Oh, those greedy teachers. Oh, all they care about is those dirty unions and taking money, and what about the kids? Well, when you're underappreciated, like the group that we have, How else would you like us to get your attention? Those district committees are not part of our contract. None of those things that we decided to do or will do on September 18th are part of our contract. Do you hire a contractor to do things and then add things onto their requirements and not pay them more, or do you expect them just to do it? We just do it because it's the right thing to do. But there's no acknowledgement of that until we stop doing it, and then we're bad for kids. We're bad for the district. We're greedy people. So I applaud the board when they acknowledge our students, our student athletes, our student scholars, our poster winners, whatever they are, because that's important for the kids. But you have to acknowledge the teachers and the staff just as much, because they are a valuable asset to this district too. And you say how much you love us and this and that and how important, but you don't show that. So maybe we can see that differently moving forward. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Cam, come on down.
Charlotte Street. I'm a speech-language pathologist in the district. I started in 1968 at $5,200, and I was a sixth grade teacher with 46 kids in my class, but my reading group was smaller. It was only 43 kids. I just needed to put that out there. But what I want to speak to you about for a moment is how disappointed I am that you decided last year, because I was at the board meeting, to drop out of the New Hampshire School Boards Association. I'm a speech-language pathologist. I'm licensed. I work under the mandates and the tenets of the American Speech-Language Hearing Association. I pay hundreds of dollars. I've spent thousands of dollars belonging to professional associations. It informs my practice. It makes me better at what I do. Every single educator in this district belongs to a professional organization. Every one of our schools belongs to a professional organization. It is so naive of you as a board to think that you can make policy without looking at the research that the organization is willing to give to you. And I was pleased when Dr. Mosley's first suggestion was that you look to the professional organization that oversees board practices. I just think that, I know several of you have disagreements with the organization, but I think as a whole, it's just one more element of how this board doesn't, as a whole, look to how you can perform better so that the school district performs better. Not belonging to a professional organization that will supply you with the research that will inform your practice is ignorant. I hope you will consider that whatever money you could spend to belong to that organization will make you a better board. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Board member comments. I'm sorry, you have a question? Or?
Nope, I want to comment.
Want to comment? Go right ahead. You're going to be first tonight.
Thank you. That's very nice of you. I appreciate that. I'd like to thank Cam for what she said about the SBA. If you saw this list of things and how long it would take to get these through, the way we would normally handle it would be getting the template from the SBA and modifying it for our district. And when we worked that way, we put through 40 policies in 1 year with 1 meeting a month and in 2 hours. And that's what that school board association does for you. The second thing I'd like to say this evening is I take a little exception to what the president of the union said about not recognizing our teachers. I have done that. I have recognized the woman who won the Women in Technology Award along with the other students, the other 5 students. I've also recognized the music director, I think he was from Dr. Crisp, who got the award from the symphony. So I really do take exception to that, me personally, because I always have said good words about our teachers, and recognize them. I really take that offense at that, and I'll continue to recognize them, and hopefully we won't have this conversation again.
Let me just start over here and come around. Dr. Murataki, any comment?
Yes. I think although this has been a long meeting, it's certainly been an interesting one. I've managed to stay awake most of this time. I would like very much to thank the members of the public. I believe that your words were enlightening, and I believe in particular the solidarity shown by the members of the Nashua Teachers Union is a good example for our community of solidarity, and that we can probably use more of that in our district. Thank you very much.
Ms. Hallwell? Mrs. Hohensee?
Yes, thank you. I would just like to point out that it's not just differences with the New Hampshire School Boards Association. Sometimes their model policies are defective. I've seen that. And I know that there are a number of members of the board that do belong to professional organizations other than the New Hampshire School Board Association. It is not the one and only. And also I would like to say that I don't think I'll speak for myself personally. We don't have anything against the teachers. I don't have anything that I'm trying to disrespect the teachers. I wasn't on the negotiating team. I'm hoping this gets resolved as quick as possible. I've spent 2 hours today, more than that, and other meetings, trying to make sure that this goes forward. I'm just going to keep Dr. Mosley's idea of the peace in the district, and I'm hoping that it'll all come through this week.
Over here, Ms. Zoden?
I'm sorry. And I see the music teacher that was awarded that. Frank is up there, and I know his last name begins with I. And it's a lot of vowels in that word. And I was fortunate enough to have him as music teacher when I was at Amherst Street School. And it was just an unbelievable experience going to pick my kids up. They were all enthused and singing, and this was at the very end of the day, and it was well-deserved. Good for you, and congratulations again. I know I had spoken to you about it. I also want to thank Dr. Mosley, Mrs. Fitzpatrick, and Dr. McKinney. A week or 10 days before school started, they had an Administrators Institute. It was for principals, assistant principals, and directors, I think, in the district. But they organized and provided professional development for those people. And I had an opportunity at Nashua Goes Back to School to speak to just about every administrative team. One of the comments was it was the best PD I've ever been to. Another comment, it was outstanding. Another comment, people left feeling enthused and looking forward to beginning the year. It was excellent. It was different from anything we've ever had. It was just what we needed. And then somebody said, we felt inspired. So I want to say thank you to Dr. Mosley, Mrs. Fitzpatrick, and Dr. McKinney for providing that. It was deeply appreciated by those people who spent the 2 days at your institute. So thank you.
Mrs. Eam?
I want to say that I feel very disappointed to have as many teachers as we had here tonight look me in the eye and tell me that they felt that I didn't appreciate them as teachers. I really think I have tried very, very hard to say to the teachers, we have the best teachers in the United States as far as I'm concerned. I say that honestly. And I don't remember ever calling them greedy. I do not remember, and I know maybe I'm taking it too personally. But it's hard not to take it personally when you're looking in their face and they're looking at you saying you called me greedy, or saying, you know, we work so hard and you don't appreciate us. I do appreciate them. I think we all do what we can do. And I, as much as I sometimes disagree with this board, I do believe every one of them care about our teachers. I give them that. I think we should give each other that credit, that acknowledgement, because without that, we have nothing on which to build. And so all I can say is I love our teachers. And if it appears that I don't love you, then please know from the bottom of my heart, I'm telling you, I appreciate what you do. I do. If nothing else, I absolutely have a great respect for our teachers. Thank you. And the paraprofessionals too, by the way. I meant to remind
Sandra, there are
myself.
7 unions. You better mention
No,
them.
no, but in specific tonight, we were talking about the paras and the teachers. And our paras, I've always said, for the service we get from them, they're underpaid. They just are. They don't make a living wage. So that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Mr. Kaufman.
Thank you. So relative to these policies that I brought forward, I will send a copy to the board tonight. It will therefore be public. You can certainly ask Tara for a copy. They're available if she were there right now. And I had an interesting conversation with Dr. Mosley today, and one of the things we talked about was trust. And that's one of the things we have to develop and nurture at the board level. So all I'll say is, wait until you see the proposals I gave you before you decide that it's too much. Thank you.
I'm done. I had my chance.
Second.
Seconded by everybody. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion passes. We're adjourned at 10:35.